today's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5.
You got me good there.
Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah.
Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace
Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
And
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very different programme for you today. Live action throughout the programme. Israelis gathering in Tel Aviv, awaiting the imminent release of hostages, and we are right across that for you this morning.
Yes, as the Israeli military confirmed that the Red Cross are travelling to the meeting point in Gaza.
With 6 of the 48 hostages set to be returned today, they will be freed first.
Well, this is just hours before the Prime Minister is set to join world leaders in Egypt for the historic signing of the Gaza peace plan, with Donald Trump arriving in Tel Aviv as we speak.
We're going to have an amazing time, and it's going to be something that's never happened before.
100 years ago today, since Margaret Thatcher was born. And what a different world it is. Your tributes, or did she divide or did she unite? Let us know what you think. We're going to pay tribute to the Iron Lady's legacy.
I know full well the responsibilities that await me as I enter the door of number 10 and I'll strive unceasingly to try to fulfill the trust and confidence that the British people have placed in me.
And in sport this morning, Scotland beat Belarus to get closer to the World Cup. The managers still not very happy about it. Big test for Wales and Northern Ireland tonight as they take on Belgium and Germany. And the rank outsider who ended the Sinner Alcaraz monopoly yesterday.
It's a gloomy start to the day for some of us. Find out if there's any sunshine on the way this week in your full forecast coming up.
Hello there, very good morning to you on this Monday morning. Thank you for starting your day with us on television and on radio. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Live eyes on Gaza this morning as the hostages will be released today in what President Trump is calling the end of Israel's war with Hamas. The American president set off to Israel yesterday. He will set down there sometime within the next hour to see through this peace deal. He said it was an honor to be involved.
It's the first time everybody is amazed and they're thrilled, and it's an honor to be involved, and we're going to have an amazing time, and it's going to be something that's never happened before.
Well, it's understood the Red Cross are currently en route to a meeting point to collect the first 6 hostages. Sir Keir Starmer arrived in Egypt last night for a Gaza peace summit where he's expected to praise President Trump and Arab nations for their efforts towards peace in the Middle East.
Well, to discuss this, we're joined by the defence editor at The Standard. We say good morning to Robert Fox, and we've got the deputy political editor of The Spectator, James Heal. Robert, how historic is this, or is this likely to be today?
We just have to do it step by step, because if it works, it's going to end the most terrible war. It doesn't end the crisis, though, because you have 2.1 million Gazans with no home to go to. You have an Israeli army with over 500,000 under arms, tensions in the West Bank, that's an underestimate, threats on the borders. It's still very, very volatile. And the counsel really is, for today, is to take it step by step. Don't get fixated on timetables, because for one thing, as far as I can understand, they don't know where all the bodies of the dead hostages are. Yeah. I mean, this is going to take quite a lot of time. So it'll go on in our time and in their time through the afternoon and to sunset. But I don't think, from what Hamas and Mr. Netanyahu, the Israel Prime Minister, has been saying, they're going to pull up the drawbridge suddenly and say, no, you've broken your word, or it hasn't gone to plan, it's all over. And at least Donald Trump's presence ensures that it will go on. It's a process physically now that he is committed to, and will see it through.
And James, there is no doubt it is an historic occasion, and it will bring to an end, hopefully, 2 years of absolute misery for everyone concerned in all of this. But I'm just not getting Trump's language on this. The man, his vocabulary just stuns me. It's like, we're going to have an amazing time. Is that the way to describe him? We're going to hand over maybe 30 dead bodies at some stage, and he's going to have an amazing time.
Yeah, I mean, probably not. But then he's always had a sort of unorthodox lexicon. He is someone who has, like many US presidents before him, been unable to resist the decision to sort of try and leave a legacy in the Middle East. He's tried to sort of use leverage where possible to pull some levers. And, I mean, it's been quite interesting for those with a sort of psychological perspective. The comments he was making on Air Force One overnight, saying that he wasn't going to get into heaven, etc. I think this is very much about Trump seeing this as a legacy, seeing this as a degree of continuity with the first term. And in some ways, he is obviously quite an eccentric choice in president, but he is also the one who is prepared to sort of sometimes be a bit George or sometimes be a bit war.
But he's got it done, I mean, to his credit. And how much of that would you put down to him?
I think that his role personally is clearly important. He's someone who Netanyahu respects. He's clearly, the Americans have been the ones calling the shots throughout all of this. And so I do think he is entitled to take a slice of credit for that. And I do wonder, perhaps, if we'd had a different president last week when it was announced, maybe we'd have seen more calls and clamours for sort of Nobel Prizes, etc.
Well, we are expecting these hostages, the first hostages, to be released imminently. We can see pictures on the screen now of Hostage Square in Tel Aviv, absolutely packed with people. It is being televised on screens in Hostage Square, waiting for those first glimpses of those hostages. We have just received a list of the first hostages that are going to be released. Hamas has said they're going to free Matan and Grest, brothers Gali and Ziv Berman, Olan Ohel, Eaton Moore and Omri Moran. Those are the names of the men that are going to be released first this morning.
Interestingly, though, there's been a ban on Hamas showing any sort of celebratory achievement with all of this. There won't be guns fired into the air or any massive photo opportunities, we hear.
This anticipates the next chapter for Gaza. Eamonn, you're absolutely right. There's going to be no, as far as we can see, big display. The hostages were paraded in a rather gruesome way before, nor, I suspect, if they're well advised, should they be exposed to too much publicity or public glare when they get to Israel. Psychologically, as you and I will know, going back to Northern Ireland and hostage releases and so on, the technical guys, the really good psychiatrists. I talked to one of the top Dutch guys, Bastiaans, that released people from sieges there. The worst possible thing that you can do when people have been in trauma like this is to expose them to publicity. So it's going to be very interesting to see the way it's orchestrated. Netanyahu, because of his troubles at home politically, will want to make a big show of this. Trump, for different reasons, will. But can I just answer your previous question? The great thing that Trump did was that he took advice and he took advantage of that bombing of the Hamas headquarters in Qatar. And that's when he really forced, as we saw very publicly, Netanyahu.
Explain to me, in Qatar, the Israelis didn't get who they wanted to get in that. So that.
Well, what was the point of getting him? He's now the lead negotiator. He's the one that signed the deal. This is where people like Rubio, Witkoff, and Jared Kushner, who's a very smart guy and very experienced there, realised what the opportunity was. And all credit to Trump. He did it publicly in a very Trumpian way, but it's what got this thing going. I think.
Yeah, certainly. I think that willingness to sometimes be a bit sort of out of the box and sort of launch a few missiles, etc., and all the other times sue for peace has definitely been something that's impressed different actors in the region, because he's actually been able to back up his actions and not merely offer the carrot but the stick too.
I mean, James, let's reflect on these images we're seeing now on a hostage square. I mean, people are waiting so anxiously, aren't they, for the first glimpses of these hostages being released imminently. I mean, this is the day they probably feared would never come.
Yes, I mean, we're expecting to have the 20 hostages, remains of the 28 deceased hostages released over the course of the day after 738 days in captivity. Really quite extraordinary, and I think that this is going to be the key point for the next stages of peace, because that has always been the argument by Netanyahu and others, is release the hostages and then we can talk. And so that will be a key thing. But for now, I think the next 24 hours are only going to be about the reunited
The next stage of the peace, Robert, does it involve Hamas folding up and going away, and is that likely to happen?
Well, we've heard gunfire, haven't we, over the weekends. Hamas calling 7,000 to arms to police things and sorting out two of the clans. They had a go at one lot in the south and one lot in the centre, and it's very interesting who these clans were. And remember, it's clan politics, and there's a lot of it just sheer gangsterism. We've had the extreme ideology with the Sinwar brothers, but there's also this sheer criminality, because one of the ones that they were sorting out, they accused of looting and hoarding aid and firing on Gazans. I think it's going to be very difficult to tell Hamas to go away if there is a vacuum. They've talked about the stabilisation force. They've talked about the board or the panel of peace. Now there's even questions of whether Sir Tony Blair should join it. Yeah. You cannot have 2 million people on the move and nobody to police them. And this must be a real fear both for the Red Cross, the UN and the NGOs.
How you pick up, how you rebuild that place, how you involve those people, as you say, 2 million people on the move. But somebody's on the move, and again, I'm scratching my head at this today, James. What's this got to do with Keir Starmer? I mean, this week he already was in India, and now he's not in London. He's gone out to Egypt to be involved in this again. Seriously, has he had a major role in all of this?
Well, it was quite striking that the Education Secretary, when asked about this, didn't give any details yesterday, saying that we've played a key role behind the scenes. My understanding is that we've played some role which we would expect regardless of whichever party was in power, so things such as intelligence sharing, there's played a role, some help on hostage identification, and also in terms of shepherding our Gulf allies on certain points of this 20-point plan. So, for instance, one person I spoke to in the Foreign Office was keen to point to the King of Jordan's visit to the UK, the role connection with the Saudis. But as you say, Eamonn, a lot of the shots have been called by the Americans, and the leverage that's going to be exercised in keeping people to account will be done by the Qataris, Egyptians, not really us. So I do think that we've played a role. Whether it is a key role, I think, is much more open to dispute.
And it's a testament, isn't it, to President Trump's power that he called this peace summit, as it's being called in Egypt, on Friday. And 20 world leaders are there, ready for this signing today. I mean, that says something, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It says about his convening power. It also speaks to the tensions in different domestic polities that have been unleashed by this. Yeah. All these countries are very much affected, and that's also, for instance, Meloni in Italy, who's going to have a huge increase over the next couple of years, probably seen as a result of the ripples of this conflict in the Middle East, with people arriving on her shore. So I think that is a testament to both Donald Trump's power as a figure and also how much this conflict means to different countries around the world.
And these world leaders will want to be here for this day in history, Robert.
It's not a day in history. I'm absolutely with James. I think it's Labour Party politics that takes Starmer there. Meloni, I'm fascinated by, as you know, because there's a huge pro-Palestinian movement. And the thing about Meloni, she gets on very well with Trump, but she seems to have the same kind of charisma, and a lot of luck goes her way. She's a very, very shrewd operator. She's now looking possibly one of, if not the most stable leaders of a major country in Europe. Amazing to say that, isn't it? She is really important because Italy, funnily enough, really does have a big dog in this fight. Trading with Lebanon, trading in the region. I agree. Our main thing is special forces, security, with the Kingdom of Jordan, mainly. A bit with the UAE, because the UAE with Qatar and Saudi have got to deliver I've got to say it, the 500 billion question. How are you going to reconstruct this place?
Yeah, but you were mentioning Labour Party politics there, Robert, and there is a suggestion that the Prime Minister, our Prime Minister, would rather be anywhere rather than in Parliament today, taking questions about the collapse of this Chinese spy case last week.
Well, there's a funny thing. That's going to haunt him. It's a big one. What's behind that, the softening to China, because I've been writing for 2 newspapers over the weekend, for The Eye and The Independent, and the phraseology is just weird. It's Alice in Wonderland playbook to say, when is a threat a challenge or a competitor or friendly cooperation? This is a thing that's run for ages. Peter Mandelson used to talk about this a lot when he was trade commissioner for the EU. And it's this business of, you know, that I think the Telegraph splash, the headline, has got really on the money. Absolutely. We seem to be so much in hock to China that China threatening to pull the plug seems to be able to be the very large tail that swings this particular dog. But the point is, are the named parties, namely the Attorney General Lord Homer, but particularly the National Security Advisor Jonathan Powell, are they going to step up on the boards and be called to account publicly? The defence of Powell particularly seems to be bizarre to astonishing, saying, oh, no, he's really private staff. When has an NSA been that, and therefore shouldn't be called before Parliament? What nonsense.
But here we are, we're sucking up to China on this one. We're sucking up to Donald Trump on anything and everything.
And he isn't sucking up to China.
He isn't?
No, he's confronting China.
Oh, Trump isn't, sorry, yes.
So, you know, how does Starmer pass that one?
If you are just joining us now, we are waiting for the first Israeli hostages to be released in the first release of those 6 hostages this morning from Gaza back into Israel. We do know that the Red Cross has arrived at the first location in Gaza, and these live pictures on the screen now of people cheering and celebrating, some people waiting anxiously in Hostage Square in Tel Aviv, waiting for the first glimpse of those hostages. Robert, why has there been some confusion over the weekend about the timing of this first release? I mean, we know that 10 a.m. this morning is the deadline, British time, for those hostages.
It's noon, yeah.
But there was talk last night of potentially these hostages starting to be released last night.
I think it's it's practicality again. It's what the Red Cross can do, and it's quite clear that the Red Cross has said to Hamas or whoever, and it is Hamas, we can't do it all at once. It's just too difficult, too delicate, and I think that that's where there will be a lot of angst. But looking at the hostage family and supporters, that's now a political grouping. It's a very powerful political grouping in Israel, and it's another factor. We witnessed that when they had the rally for the hostages, and Witkoff was saying, praising Trump, of course, and praising Netanyahu, didn't go down at all well with that particular lobby. And I think one of the consequences, the fallouts that we've got to face from this is how fragmented, fragmented Israeli politics is. And it could be really worrying. But James, Netanyahu's on borrowed time. He's got to have an election within a year.
You say that, Robert, and James, I'm just looking at these scenes, and these are joyous.
Yeah.
There's excitement here, and I mean, I look upon this as a very serious, very sad. I mean, to be handing over dead bodies as well today, but celebratory that we're seeing here.
I think it's relief. I think it's just the natural outpouring of emotion, and I mean, it's a little over the top, the comparison, but it's sort of akin to maybe 1945, and obviously people were very happy about that. And thereafter, of course, they then voted out Churchill 2 months later, so maybe perhaps we'll see the same thing. I wouldn't say necessarily it is sort of ecstatic joy, but people are happy, obviously, the fact that these hostages are finally being released after 2 years.
But picking up on Robert's point about what this reflects and what this means to Netanyahu, President Trump is getting praise in this. Starmer's left London to try and get praise to be associated with this. So is Netanyahu in the shadows with this one? Is he in real danger politically after all of this, or can he take any credit for this?
Well, he can try and take some credit, but obviously there were questions ever since the beginning of the war about Netanyahu's response to that, how prepared the IDF was for that attack on the 7th of October. His government has lived under a shadow throughout. There have been constant questions, coalition tensions. So now that his sort of raison d'etre of his wartime government has been partially removed, there will be lots of questions in the Knesset about how long this can continue, what a sort of exit game looks like. And again, all those unanswered questions about 7th of October and why Israel allowed itself to be so taken by surprise and these hostages taken in the first place. So one of the sort of medium-term questions as a result of today's news is going to be about Netanyahu's future in Israeli politics.
I mean, he's put himself front and centre of this hostage return. We're just seeing pictures online of a handwritten note that each of these hostages is going to receive from Benjamin Netanyahu and his wife today. This is going to be in packs that they have provided in the hospitals for these 20 men who are going to be released today. The note reads, on behalf of the entire people of Israel, welcome back. We have been waiting for you and we embrace you. The kit is going to include clothing, a laptop, a mobile phone and a tablet. And I was also reading this morning, Robert, that it includes a teddy bear, because you can only imagine the trauma that these men have been through for the past 2 years.
It is a problem for Netanyahu because he's issued, if I can put it like that, a major inquiry into October the 7th. And of course it is the moderate left-wing liberal press, mainstream like Haaretz, that are saying, actually you've got a lot to answer for, the way you handled Hamas when you were going after Fatah in the West Bank. So there's a lot of baggage. But the other thing, I was reading some of the stuff that's come through, again, the Telegraph, very comprehensive coverage today, saying that Netanyahu was saying last night, the war isn't over, and we're getting ready for this. Now, I don't know how the IDF, and I think that's one of the really worrying things, the IDF, which is a citizen army, has been politicised in part by that. One of the warnings is, and I was counting it, there are at least 3, possibly 4, chiefs of staff now in politics against Netanyahu and the settler right wing, including one of the recent and most distinguished ones, Eisenkot. But, you know, Ehud Barak, Benny Gantz, and they're going to go after him. And it looks to me as if the right is going to split now, and maybe even Likud itself will divide. This is way down the road, but there has to be an election unless you declare an absolute emergency, which would mean martial law. There has to be an election well before this time next year.
And Netanyahu has had this coalition with the right, which has often been people who want to full-on clear out Hamas, fight to the last, and now we've had
Annex West Bank, chunks of it. Yeah,
precisely. What does this mean? It splits this potential coalition, and obviously some people will now want to sort of sue for a resolution. Others will want to keep on fighting to finish the job, as that's been very much Netanyahu's rhetoric throughout this whole conflict.
The Reuters is reporting in the past few moments that those first 7 hostages have been handed over to the Red Cross in Gaza. They said it will not provide footage of released hostages or detainees during the operations out of respect for the dignity of those released and the condition they may be in, as well as issues linked to their safety. But they are reporting that they have now been handed over. That's a huge relief to those hundreds of people.
Well, it means the process has started. Yeah.
But Robert, what we talk about, you know, as if it's a simple thing. We've got the hostages, we'll hand them over, war over. What condition would these people be in? What way would they have been held? Would they have been tortured? What's your thinking of what's going on?
Well, physical or otherwise, yes, they would have been tortured because they'd been detained, they'd been deprived, they didn't know whether they were going to live or die. They knew that colleagues,
this is for 2 years.
And for 2 years. And frankly, we have advanced so much in understanding this. We have to be much more careful. Think of the condition of the Japanese prisoners of war on the death railway. They were in a terrible state. A great friend of our family used to dream almost every night for the rest of his life from that. And, you know, coming back from the Falklands, thinking of Maggie Thatcher, where I reported for the BBC, that was the year, 1982, that PTSD became a public coin, a public expression. People began to understand it. We've got to think through from that. They need a lot of care, because with most of them, this will be with them for life.
Yeah. We have to, James and Robert, I'm interested in both your thoughts on this. Today would have been Margaret Thatcher's 100th birthday. A lot of the newspapers commemorating her today and thinking about her and situations like this. How would she have been involved? What sort of leader would she have been in today's world? Would she have been relevant or not? What are your thoughts, James?
Well, I think that there are a lot of people on the right now, and even across the spectrum, looking for someone with that clarity of purpose and an agenda to drive through government. I think there's lots of comparisons between Britain in the 2020s and the 1970s, and I think that they miss a leader who, with absolute clarity and intellectual strength, which people respected even if they didn't agree with it, is missing from current politics today. So I think there are lessons from Margaret Thatcher, even if the challenges of Britain require perhaps different solutions slightly to those in the 1970s.
Yeah. The difference I see, Robert, here is I see Thatcher, historically, rightly or wrongly, but I see her as a leader and I see Starmer as a follower. I look at Egypt in the situation. He scuttles out there as one of a number of people out there. She would have struck me as someone who would have led the way in being there.
She would have taken counsel. I was just thinking, they're both lawyers, but both very different politicians.
Was she a lawyer? I thought she was a scientist.
She's a scientist and a lawyer. She read for the bar too. Yeah, absolutely.
Gosh.
Cleverly, what I was going to say that struck me, you saying that, she could make relationships. She really could make relationships. She made relationship with Gorbachev, but she made a very powerful relationship with Shimon Peres. And this was where she was terribly good instinctively. She was a far more practical politician, in my experience of her, than people realized. I mean, I was very privileged. I got a full debrief about the advice she was getting about the Falklands after the event from Lord Terry Lewin, delightful man, not remembered, the chief of the defence staff at the time, just said that she was brilliant in the way she took advice, sought advice from the military. And 6 years after leaving office, she went through the whole thing with me at a memorable lunch for 3 or 4 hours. But she was, again, very empathetic because she brought everybody into the conversation, including my wife. Said, what did you do when he was stuck up there, either on a ship getting shot at or in the middle of a funny place called Goose Green? And she was genuinely inquiring about it, which I was fascinated by.
If you are just joining us this morning, Israel says that the first hostages have been released as part of the Gaza peace deal. They say that 7 hostages have been handed over to the Red Cross. They are all men. The announcement was made with huge cheers in Hostage Square. We can see the scenes on our screen now. Hundreds of people gathered there overnight. Television screens have been put up in the square for people to hopefully capture a glimpse of the hostages, but Israel and the Red Cross have so far said that there won't be any footage of the hostages being released. Hamas agreed to this as part of this, that there would be no displays, no handover ceremony, that instead, out of respect for the dignity of those being released and the condition they may be in, there will be no footage of them.
There's a 2-hour time difference, though, and they are working to Greenwich Mean Time, so they're working to our time, and the idea is that the hostage handover should be, or as part of the conditions, be completed by 10 a.m. our time, so that's 3.5 hours away from now, so a lot to go through on that thing. We're going to take a short break there, and we've been referring to Margaret Thatcher, and we'll be doing that again, looking back 100 years today since her birth.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here.
I'm Michelle Duke, Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Just bringing you up to date with that breaking news in the past few minutes that 7 hostages have been handed over by Hamas to the Red Cross in Gaza. Let's have a look at the scenes in Hostage Square, shall we, in Tel Aviv, where hundreds of people are anxiously awaiting the return of those 20 hostages that will be released this morning. 7 have been handed over so far. Those hostages will be first reunited with their families and then taken on to hospitals. We'll bring you updates on that throughout the morning here on GB News Breakfast.
Meanwhile, today, October the 13th, marks 100 years since Margaret Thatcher's birth. That was in 1925, and celebrations are being held at various Conservative institutes around the country in her honour.
Now, whether you loathe her or love her, she's known for being the most important politician of her age.
Our reporter Anna Riley visited her hometown of Grantham in Lincolnshire to see how her legacy lives on.
I know full well the responsibilities that await me as I enter the door of number 10, and I'll strive unceasingly to try to fulfil the trust and confidence that the British people have placed in me and the things in which I believe.
Margaret Thatcher. Taking office as Prime Minister in 1979, she served for 3 successive terms. The Iron Lady's statue stands in her hometown of Grantham in Lincolnshire. A plaque marks the home above the family greengrocers that she grew up in. A museum exhibit chronicles her life. And 100 years to the day since her birth, she is remembered.
She grew up as a local girl. She went to the grammar school and she worked hard, and that sense of duty pervades everything you look at with Margaret and her time in the town. She is known for leading the country at the time of the Falklands crisis. She was instrumental in bringing down inflation, which was very significant, trying to balance the nation's books. And I think that has a lot to do with her experience of life in a corner shop.
Proud Thatcherite Simon Richards met Maggie many times. He believes she stood for traditional British values.
She transformed this country for the better, made people feel proud to be British again. I think she was an absolutely magnificent Prime Minister. She was incredibly dedicated to this country. She had very strong beliefs. It wasn't a question of being right-wing or left-wing. She was a true Brit.
Grantham moulded Margaret Thatcher, and people in the town think today's politicians could learn a thing or two from her.
She could make a decision. She could say yes or no, which politicians nowadays don't seem to be able to do. They always go around the question. So, yeah, I admire her.
It really is bad at the moment. I think we're losing our identity, which is a shame. Yeah. But what can you do?
She was a very strong person. Her ideas were her ideas, but I was OK with them, although she rubbed some people's backs up.
She's quite an inspiration, you know. I just love her.
I have fought a good fight, I have finished my course, I have kept the faith. The biblical words written on Thatcher's statue. And for those honouring her legacy, she certainly did. Anna Riley, GB News.
From our studio guests, let's get tributes or memories of Margaret Thatcher. Would you have been old enough to remember Margaret Thatcher?
Not still, no. I was born in 95, so 5 years after she left office. But I'll say this, Margaret Thatcher influenced my family hugely. She opened up the city, which allowed my dad to go and work in the city in the 1980s, Big Bang, all of that time. My family bought shares for the first time, privatisations of that era. I think that she would have been people sort of appealing to those kind of families which might have traditionally been Labour in the sort of the 80s, and we saw that with that great realignment which happened politically. And I think that she still influences so much of our time because partly, as you were saying there, she, 11 and a half years as Prime Minister, our first female Prime Minister, but also the achievement she was most proud of was being the first Prime Minister with a science degree. She had a chemistry degree from Oxford and has obviously hugely shaped our politics of the last 30 years. We might now be coming out of the kind of post-Thatcher consensus, post-globalisation consensus, but she was a massive figure in all that, and I think we will always remember that. And actually, the sad thing is I think a lot of our political leaders have been compared to her and been found wanting in terms of the comparison.
And James, something that struck me last week at the Tory party conference was even in death, she dominated the Tory party conference.
Absolutely.
I mean, pictures of her, I know it's her 100 years since she was born, so it's particularly poignant.
Because they've seen nothing like her since.
Exactly.
That's the trouble.
Posters of her everywhere, figurines. I mean, have they seen anything since? Will they ever see anything like her?
Well, I mean, the first question, of course, is will the Tory party survive? But second of all, I mean, it's just Thatcher's children. The reason why lots of people have got into politics and the Conservative politics the last 20 years or so is because they have a personal debt to the policies of Thatcherism. And so I remember the 2010 intake, I think the second most person they quoted as their hero was Margaret Thatcher because she had helped so many families across the country with her policies. And so I think that she will continue to be the dominant figure. And the question is, of course, is how can the Conservative Party have a post-Thatcher kind of theory? Cameron had a bit of modernisation, Boris had the levelling up stuff. But really, until you go back to the key principles about fiscal responsibility, which Karen Bain touched upon, I'm not sure they're going to be able to find a winning message given the popularity of Reform UK. So she will be continually obsessed over. There's a big dinner in the city, the Guildhall I'm going to tonight. People like Geoffrey Archer, Gillian Fellows appearing there. And I think that tests to the sort of the wide cross-section of society to whom she appealed.
Robert?
I remember reporting her taking over the leadership of the Tory party and how shocked the Heathites were. And I remember reporting that for the BBC Today programme. But one of the first interviews I did with her as Prime Minister was I think at a Venice summit. And she said, "You're not terribly good today, neither am I." And she this thing that Peter Carrington argued with me, name drop. Did she have it? Yes, she did have a sense of humour in a very interesting way. But can I just say, the science thing is so important, because I do remember her talking to a group of us about demography and migration, and she really understood that. And where the science came in, she was brilliant on the AIDS pandemic. If only Margaret Thatcher and somebody of her outlook, understanding and depth of two cultures was around during COVID, we wouldn't have had half the mess that we're going through. We wouldn't have had the corruption either to the degree that we've had.
But in fairness, when I look at tributes in the papers and things today, she's always painted as divisive. Now, there's no reason why my family, I mean, we didn't have the choice to vote Conservative in Northern Ireland anyway, but there's no reason why people from my background would have adored Margaret Thatcher or whatever. However, she did affect people's lives, and in our particular case, we were able to purchase our council house at the time. Now, and that is transformational. I mean, to actually make a family like ours, who'd never owned property, actually own this house, which we do to this day, was an amazing thing. But then you go to other parts of the country, Nottingham and Leicester, and mining areas and whatever it is, and again, very, very divisive, all of that.
Yeah, it is indeed. And the big thing, the big thing was the Falklands, followed by the miners' strike. And they were seen in the same way, which was so unfortunate. And as you absolutely say, the northeast parts of Nottingham and so on, the post-industrial wasteland in the economy there, they do attribute to Thatcher, and we have to see it in those terms.
What would have been done? I mean, if you had been in charge, we're asking you at home listening and watching, would you have closed the mines? Would you have kept them open? What was the alternative? What was the answer in memory of Margaret Thatcher? We'll be reflecting that throughout the morning.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your reflections. Just a reminder of that breaking news in the past half an hour or so. The 7 Israeli hostages have been handed over to the Red Cross in Gaza. They'll be crossing into Israel shortly, where they'll be reunited with their families and then taken into hospital. We also have some breaking news in the past few minutes that all 1,966 Palestinian detainees who are going to be released into Gaza have boarded buses at Israeli prisons. We heard yesterday that they would not cross into Gaza until all 20 hostages are back on Israeli soil. We'll bring you up to date on all of that developing and breaking stories throughout the programme.
For the moment, we'll say goodbye to James and Robert here in the studio. We'll be back with Norman Baker and Don Neeson to reflect the stories in the papers and, of course, the big story of the day, the release of those hostages in Israel and Gaza. Back after this.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Battle of Britain Day was the 15th of September 1940, was Goering's last chance to break the Royal Air Force, and really for the RAF was a key turning point for Great Britain. If we'd have lost the battle today, then Operation Sea Lion and the invasion of England would have taken place.
And tell us the significance of where we are in Hangar 42 in Blackpool. What is the significance of where we are this morning?
Well, the Spitfire Visitor Centre, or Hangar 42 at Blackpool Airport, this was the very first hangar built in May 1939. So when we had the idea that the war was coming, they hurriedly converted RAF Squires Gate, as we know it now, to from a horse racing track to an operational airfield. Blackpool was also turned into RAF Station Blackpool, and in the rest of the war it would become Europe's biggest military training establishment.
These are the planes which defended Britain.
They were, and certainly here at Blackpool we'd have had the Hawker Hurricane operating from here during the Battle of Britain, and then the run up to the Blitz.
And a new poll out today showing that 2/3 of people under 40 don't really even know what the Battle of Britain is. Is that concerning for you? I guess that stresses the importance of places like this existing for people to come and see.
It is concerning, because if we think about how the world is today, if we forget about the struggles of the past, then there's a generation sleepwalking into problems in the future. So I think what we try and do here is keep the building as original as it is, and the realities of fighting on the ground as well as in the air during the Battle of Britain and the whole of World War II as well. So we tell a range of stories here, and I think it is very, very important that these private museums like this are supported, because if we lose them, we lose them for good.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
So much to talk to Don Neeson and Norman Baker about today. The story we're concentrating on this morning is that more than 1,700 Palestinian detainees from Gaza have been released by Israel today, and obviously we'll be featuring on that as things develop and move in the next 3 hours. Don and Norman, let's talk about our own Prime Minister's role in all of this. And the American ambassador to Israel has accused the Labour government of being delusional for claiming that Britain played a key role in securing what we are seeing here today.
Yeah, this is Mike Huckabee, who, as you say, is the ambassador. Basically, Keir Starmer has claimed that, we've had more to play in this peace deal than we literally have. And Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, was on TV yesterday saying, no, absolutely defending our role in this. And Keir Starmer's over there at the signing of the peace deal, really talking it up. And Mike Huckabee has criticised this, saying, as you said, it is delusional. I mean, under the US President's plan, Gaza will be run by a committee of Palestinian officials overseen by an international body, potentially including Tony Blair. And so we're claiming a lot of credit here. And I don't think we've done hardly anything at all. And I think a lot of people, and certainly a lot of Jewish people, are offended by the fact that Keir Starmer is claiming so much credit, especially seeing as the UK is one of the countries that recognised Palestine as a state before any hostages had been released. Many people on the Jewish side say that they've done more harm to this peace process than actually done any good for it. So a lot of people are angry that Keir Starmer is claiming so much credit for it. And personally, I agree with them. And it seems to be like a John Kerry moment.
Norman, he's not at Westminster answering questions about the Chinese court case that collapsed last week.
No, just following up from Dawn briefly, I think Huckabee is right, actually, but I think it's not very polite of him to say so. I mean, allies don't talk about each other in public like that, so he shouldn't have said what he said. And if we said something about Donald Trump, I mean, he would be furious about it. On the China matter, you know, I worry about what's happening here because, you know, I've seen over the years the ebb and flow of government policy towards China. First of all, saying human rights are terrible, which they are, of course. Concentration camps for the Uyghurs, oppression of people of Tibet, even having a picture of the Dalai Lama around, and so on. And then it goes the other way. And like we had in my day in government, David Cameron and George Osborne sucking up to the Xi Jinping to try and get Chinese investments. And what's happening now, of course, is the Chinese embassy, the Chinese want this embassy to be built where the Royal Mint used to be in London. A very sensitive location. There's a theory from, I think, from the security services that they could tap in to the City of London and all the cables that run to the City of London from where they would be, and it's a security risk. And the government appears to be wanting to give permission to this. And one of the reasons it might do is on the front page of the Telegraph, Chinese debt trap threat to Britain, about how much we're in hock to the Chinese financially, and this is probably one of the reasons. But I think we're very unwise to let the Chinese go too far into our country. We had the spy case collapse, as you mentioned, Eamonn. 2 people who should have been prosecuted were not prosecuted because the government wouldn't come up with the evidence, changed their mind, and it looks like they're kowtowing to Beijing, and it's very unwise.
And you know what? I think Mike Huckabee is absolutely right to describe him as delusional, and I think he should have said it because I think he is. And I'm grateful the Americans occasionally say things in politics that need to be said. I don't think you should tiptoe around these issues.
Dawn, let's just bring it back to the pictures we've got on the screen now, shall we? Those hundreds of people packed into Hostage Square. We saw cheers ring out when we got that news that the first 7 Israeli hostages had been transferred from Hamas to the Red Cross. And the Metro front page this morning saying this is the day that they feared would never come. You can only imagine the anxious wait of those families now waiting to receive the hostages, their loved ones.
It's quite incredible. You can't look at these scenes and not be incredibly moved and thinking about what these families have been through. I was lucky enough to interview the cousin of one of the hostages over the weekend, and he's sadly not coming back alive. But when he was taken from the kibbutz, he died protecting his wife and his children, and they had 9-year-old twins, a toddler, and she'd just fallen pregnant with a 4th child. So he never got to meet that baby. I mean, they'd literally just celebrated the fact that they were expecting again. His body is coming back today. His 9-year-old twins are going to be in Hostage Square waiting to see Daddy. And you just can't imagine what they've been through and how Ella, the wife involved, how do you explain to small children what's happened and what it means? And this is the situation we have now, Ellie. We have generations on both sides of this who have known this pain and this horror and just the sheer cruelty and the evil that's been involved in this process on both sides. I'm not taking sides here, but there's generations of children who are growing up with this pain inside them. How do you ever start educating those generations to get over that? I'm not sure where you'd even begin.
You're right, though, to reflect on the 28 bodies that are going to be returned to Israel today, Norman, because we haven't mentioned that yet. And you can only imagine how those families are feeling today as well. There's scenes of celebration in Hostage Square, but this is also a sombre day as well. Well,
I think that's exactly right, Ali. It is sombre for those people, and in some way it's more poignant if they're having the remains of their family brought back when other people are celebrating, understandably, in Hostage Square for the return of their live relatives.
It is a funny thing, and you use that word celebrate, and Trump's language just mystified me. I just think he's a very bad vocabulary. He was talking about what an exciting day it would be, and the achievements today, and making it some sort of celebration or party, whereas I would think your dignity is first and foremost with those 28 people who are dead, and the tens of thousands of people killed, murdered in Gaza itself.
I think that's right. I mean, look, this has been a bloodbath on both sides, particularly, I might say, on the Palestinian side, where I think it's 70,000 have died. It's an enormous figure. And this will resonate down the generations. And I hope what Netanyahu and his colleagues have realised is you cannot solve these matters by force. You solve matters by diplomacy in the end. You always do, all over the world. That's what comes to a solution. It will be what happens in Ukraine eventually. There'll be some diplomatic solution.
Yeah. But how are they going to get a diplomatic solution with Hamas? Hamas had no reason to negotiate.
No, they don't trust the Israeli government because they don't trust them anyway, but they didn't trust them because they broke the last ceasefire, which is why they want to insist on keeping their weapons. What has to happen, I think, is more pressure from America, actually, from the United States, and from perhaps from other Middle Eastern Arab countries to get hold of this thing and try and keep it away from both the Israeli government and away from Hamas.
In credit to Trump, in fairness, he has got things done. If you'd have thought about a Biden administration here, would we, where would we be at with that?
No, we wouldn't. I mean, Trump, I don't like Donald Trump, but I mean, credit to him, he has actually caused this to occur today, and it wouldn't be occurring otherwise. He's rung up Netanyahu and said, you will do this. And he's the only person in the world who could have done that. It's all about Keir Starmer, as I say, they've been influential. They haven't been influential. Donald Trump is the only person Netanyahu would listen to, and he's been told, we will cut off arms or whatever Trump has said, unless you do what we're telling you to do.
I think even the fiercest critics would admit that Donald Trump has achieved something here, regardless of what you think of him, regardless of what you think the reasons he's doing it for. We've had lots of, it's his ego, he's doing it for him, etc., for the Nobel Peace Prize, etc., etc. But regardless of all of that, he has done it.
He has.
For now, where we go from here is a different matter, but for now, he's stopped people dying.
Well, I mean, I don't want to sound churlish. You could have done it some time before. But
well, of course, but that does sound churlish, if you don't mind me saying so, Norman.
And those will be questions that will follow the scenes of jubilation that we see now in Hostage Square, questions of, well, what has taken so long?
Well, I think what's going to happen afterwards, the Israeli population is not happy with the Israeli government, by and large. And we saw when Steve Witkoff, the US envoy, mentioned Netanyahu's name, there were boos ringing around all over. So, and I think, his politics is normal in a sense when the hostages are returned. And I think at that point there'll be a lot of people very unhappy with Netanyahu, who, of course, some people say has kept the war going. He kept himself out of court. He's facing criminal charges, and he can't be held in court while the war was on.
It'd be interesting to see what the people of Gaza think of their government, i.e. Hamas. Will they have the same reaction, sort of like, that resentment of the leader?
Well, they ought to have.
They ought to, yes.
Norman, we're commemorating 100 years since the birth of Margaret Thatcher today as well. Your memories politically, I mean, you must have rubbed shoulders with her.
I was a researcher in the House of Commons when she was still Prime Minister, so I would see her around the place. I mean, she was, I was talking to Dawn off air, she was a very Marmite figure. People either loved her or hated her. But I didn't agree with her in many ways. But what she wanted to do, she by and large did, and she achieved it. And I think she, whatever you say about Margaret Thatcher, she was a basically honest person. She was an honest Prime Minister who did what she thought was right for the country. I'm not sure it necessarily was, but that's, I don't mind people who I disagree with if they're being honest and well motivated. I think she was.
There was a certain morality, was there?
There was morality, which has been sadly lacking, for example, with Boris Johnson and other Prime Ministers recently.
Yeah, we had a little run-through off air, didn't we, about sort of the people that have less spherical objects, let's say, than Margaret Thatcher, who have been in government ever since.
Do you think she's a leader the Conservatives could do with now?
Eamonn, I think you and I could probably do a good job, to be honest with you. Look, I'm not dissing Kemi Badenoch. I mean, she's got an incredibly hard job. But, I mean, Margaret Thatcher, as Norma's just said, was a class act.
OK. Thank you both very much indeed. We'll see you again in about 45 minutes' time. Next time around, we're going to talk about Prince Andrew and the shocking email revelations about him later on.
Yeah, if you have just joined us, just a reminder that 7 Israeli hostages, have now been released to the Red Cross in Gaza. They are making their way back into Israel, where they'll be reunited with their families and then will be put into Israeli hospitals where they'll be receiving medical care. We'll have developments for you throughout the morning. First, here's...
Today's outlook: cool, calm and completely horizontal. Boxed aircon sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning and welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's a gloomy start to the new working week for some of us, and there's even some fog in places too. But it will turn gradually sunnier for more northern parts of the UK as we go through the course of the day. That fog slowly lifting as we go through the course of this morning, so many parts of Scotland, northern England and perhaps also North Wales seeing at least some sunshine coming out by this afternoon. Many other parts of England and Wales though, and indeed Northern Ireland, staying quite gloomy we think through much of today, and that cloud potentially thick enough to give one or two light showers in places too. Quite a cool feeling day across England and Wales, but further north where the sunshine does persist through the course of this afternoon, highs of 15 or 16 degrees and light winds should feel pleasant enough as we go through this afternoon. And by this evening, it will still be fine for most of Scotland. Still more in the way of cloud, though, across the Northern Isles, so Shetland, Orkney and the Outer Hebrides also ending the day on a fairly cloudy note. Some late brightness for Northern Ireland perhaps, but generally fairly cloudy skies further south across England and Wales. And once again, the chance of a few spots of light rain or drizzle in places, particularly across the southeast of England. As we go through the course of tonight, that area of cloud will act like a blanket, so temperatures aren't going to fall very far across England and Wales, we don't think, through the course of tonight, so lows potentially staying in double figures in some towns and cities. A different story though further north though, much more in the way of clear sky here, and that's going to promote some further fog patches to develop by the time we get to tomorrow morning, and temperatures in the countryside here could fall low enough to give some patchy frost. The fog in the north then slowly lifting as we go through the day on Tuesday, but taking its time. Otherwise, some sunshine for parts of northern England, Northern Ireland and southern and western Scotland on Tuesday. Otherwise, another fairly gloomy day to come. Still the chance of a few light showers, particularly across Kent and the far southeast of England, and therefore feeling quite cool underneath that area of cloud. Otherwise, though, temperatures close to average for the time of year.
Today's outlook: cool, calm and completely horizontal. Boxed aircon sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The M8 is restricted eastbound at junction 17 due to a broken down vehicle. Motorists should exercise caution and allow additional travel time. The M48 has a 7.5-ton weight restriction for heavy goods vehicles from the 27th of May 2025 until further notice. On the M60 clockwise, a road incident between junction 15 and junction 16 closed one of 4 lanes. And on the trains, there's disruption on the Gatwick Express through Clapham Junction, and Northern buses replace trains between Corkicle and Whitehaven. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
There's just 3 weeks left to see how you could be our biggest winner this year. First, you could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primera motorhome. This luxury vehicle comfortably sleeps 4, has its own fitted kitchen and bathroom areas, and comes complete with fitted awning and bicycle rack. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. Hamas hands over 7 hostages to the Red Cross in Gaza.
All of this as Israel prepares to release more Palestinian prisoners, thousands of them in exchange. We believe 7,000 have been exchanged already, with both sides reaffirming their commitment to following the peace plan.
Well, just hours before the Prime Minister is set to join world leaders in Egypt for the historic signing of the Gaza peace plan, Donald Trump will be travelling to Tel Aviv and will be landing very shortly.
We're going to have an amazing time, and it's going to be something that's never happened before.
100 years today since Margaret Thatcher was born, and what a different world it is. We have been paying tribute and reflecting on the Iron Lady's legacy. If you want to have your say, then do just that.
I know full well the responsibilities that await me as I enter the door of number 10, and I'll strive unceasingly to try to fulfill the trust and confidence that the British people have placed in me.
It's a gloomy start to the day for some of us. Find out if there's any sunshine on the way this week in your full forecast coming up.
On this Monday morning, a very good morning to you. Thank you for your company. We're with you live until 9:30. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast. And let's start with the scenes in Hostage Square, shall we, in Tel Aviv, where there have been scenes of jubilation and celebration this morning. You can see people cheering there, the Israeli flags, pictures of the hostages. People have been gathering there overnight since yesterday afternoon, waiting for news of the release of those hostages. And in the past hour, we have had news that those first hostages have been handed over. The first 7 men have been released to the International Red Cross in Gaza. They are making their way back to Israel, where they will be reunited with their families, and then they will be taken to hospital where they will receive medical care. We also know that Palestinian prisoners and detainees have been boarded onto buses inside Israel. They will be returned to Gaza, but only once all 20 hostages are on Israeli soil. That's the breaking news in the past half an hour or so.
Let's get the latest comments on all of this. Defence editor of The Standard, Robert Fox, deputy political editor of The Spectator, James Heal. James, what do you make of what you're seeing and hearing so far this morning?
Well, it's exactly what we wanted to hear, sort of the staggered, timely release of these hostages in accordance with the pre-release conditions. Obviously, there's not going to be any pictures, as agrees between both sides. And I think we're not going to be able to sort of breathe a sort of sigh of relief until all of this is concluded by noon our time. But overall, it's going to be something where it's a lot of relief for those who are in the crowds at Hostage Square. And we await to see, you know, how the rest of the day unfolds in terms of both the sort of 20 hostages from the Israeli side and, of course, the 2,000 who are getting released back to the Gaza Palestinian side as well.
Robert, can you in some way embolden, paint for us, envisage for us the effect all of this has on Britain, not only for Jewish people living here and the violence we have experienced in Manchester, for instance, but by and large for the British populace? We've got our Prime Minister who's flown to Egypt today to be part of all of this. Why is that important for Great Britain?
It's a factor of British politics now. In particular, looking at Keir Starmer, it's a factor of Labour politics. They have had a division over the pro-Palestinian wing, the support for Palestine Action on the left. and it is active, absolutely sort of zero-sum politics that you're getting there. There's something else in the Palestinian movement, and I think that there's real apprehension on the part of the Jewish community. It is misapprehension, which I find very, very difficult to take, considering if you go back to the English Civil War, which from so much happens, Oliver Cromwell, emblematic figure, who actually tolerated Jews and brought Jews over who were being persecuted in Amsterdam and brilliantly celebrated, it must be said at the same time. I don't want to go down the history wormhole, but brilliantly celebrated by an eclectic figure like Rembrandt. We have this very, very rich history. We've had Jewish prime ministers. We've had Benjamin Disraeli. And the idea that, and I know Jewish friends feel that they're regarded as alien because I've been in company where a Jewish friend feels he can confide in me and nobody else. I'm not saying that I'm special, far from it. I'm upset that he feels he can't talk to other people. And this is why socially up, and we've got to be very careful and very sensitive. You don't have to be a hard-over Netanyahu-ite, but to see where the whole story is going. I've heard people give you dreadful chop logic bits of history. Oh, the Balfour Declaration, wasn't that nonsense, and so on. Well, that's just a rubbish view of history. Anyway, Jews and Arabs have lived in that part of the world for millennia, and this is what we've got to get with. It is actually lowering voices and mere civility of learning again how to talk to each other.
Well, that was history, but looking ahead to the future, I mean, Robert mentioned Palestinian action there. Does that mean they wind down? Is their job done now?
Well, I mean, there'll be a schism in that kind of sort of community in terms of some people will think, oh, job done, but actually we've already seen protests, and I think it's some of the sort of forces that have been awakened by October the 7th and what's followed. It would be a mistake to think that that's going to go back into the box. I think it's sometimes compared the Gaza movement to Vietnam, and of course what happened with the New Left in '68 didn't go away with the conclusion of the war in '75. I think that is similar to what's happened here. I think in the next election we're going to see potentially 20 Gaza independent-style candidates elected in different constituencies. You can see that sort of break with the Labour voting bloc has been decisively broken at the last election, and I think that this is going to remain a fact of life. And just to say on Robert's point about the remission of Jews to England in 1656, between 1656 and 1960, not a single Jew was killed for being Jewish in this country, which is makes us unique in Europe and America. And we would see how these forces, one would hope they manifest themselves in peaceful ways, but I think there is a sort of underbelly to a lot of kind of the forces that have been unleashed since the 7th of October.
But just to raid on the parade a bit, I absolutely agree with you, Jack. In the 20 points to it's what kind of statehood can the Palestinians achieve, both on the West Bank and in Gaza, is a very, very big issue. That will not go away. And there's a thing that hasn't reared its head yet. When you get to the extremes through Islamic Jihad, is what is going to happen to IS, because that hasn't gone away. This is a thing where we mustn't be too binary about this. We must look at the whole thing, because it sounds like waffle, but that does strike at the heart of Britain as well, because this comes back again and again. This kind of off-book, strange, almost psychopathic terrorism that we've seen on too many occasions and on these shores.
Just to bring you some breaking news in the past few minutes, this is President Trump speaking on Air Force One by his press secretary, Caroline Leavitt. She's telling the press that Donald Trump is watching the release of hostages on television aboard Air Force One. He's set to land in Israel very shortly now, where he'll be meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu, who'll be meeting with hostage families, before later heading to Egypt for what the White House is describing as the ceremony of peace. James. Now, we saw Bridget Phillipson yesterday talking about Britain's key role in this peace deal, and she was described as delusional by the US ambassador to Israel. What do you think the true story is in that, and in Britain's role in all of this?
Well, in the last few minutes, we've had Steve Witkoff, obviously key Trump representative in the region, who's been saying that he wants to thank the United Kingdom for its invaluable work and thanking the tireless effort of Jonathan Powell, the National Security Advisor. I can't help but be a little cynical and point out that Jonathan Powell, not because of the Middle East, but because of the China story, will be probably a key feature in parliamentary debate later today. The Conservatives are going to put an urgent question on that and the government's relationship with China in this collapsed trial that went on. In terms of the Middle East, I think that we have played a role. We obviously have a great deal of resources still in that region, allies, etc. But clearly we haven't played we haven't called the shots in the way that we might have once done a few generations ago. So I think that more details will come out over time. I think it would be fair to say that we've obviously played our role in terms of offering diplomatic experience where we can, but clearly we've been trying to be in lockstep and trying to influence Trump rather than exercising a really independent foreign policy.
And I think it speaks more to what Trump wants from Britain.
Indeed.
It's very interesting. He likes Britain. He's really warmed of late. And I think we have one person above all to thank for that, and it's King Charles.
Indeed.
He really likes and respects what Charles says to him, dare I say it, even more than the Prime Minister. Yeah.
Tell us more about Jonathan Powell. I'm reading about him here in connection with the failed Chinese prosecution case, the spying case, last week. And the Mail are running a headline today. It has revealed an uneasy truth. The shadowy cabal of men is running Britain. Our Prime Minister is not one of them. And this is basically talk about Jonathan Powell's power. He is regarded as a security advisor.
Well, the NSA was, the job was kick-started by Cameron, because it always existed, by the way, and it was usually a senior diplomat, and it was largely titular. You fitted in with other people like the chairman of the Joint Intelligence Committee. The first one, curiously, was a diplomat, and is very active still, Lord Peter Ricketts. But it was always regarded that you were a mainstream civil servant of great experience. It was almost like the father of the house, almost like the people who make up the Intelligence and Security Committee. Really, really wise greybeards almost. Then we get Jonathan Powell, who'd been Chief of Staff to Tony Blair, and he is more powerful than any of them, as far as I can discern, and yet the Starmer spin says that he is a private hiring.
So I just want to cut across you, Robert, there, because that applause, what do we attribute that to, Ellie?
Well, we're seeing pictures of Red Cross vehicles. Those live pictures there were of Red Cross vehicles moving through packed streets in Gaza. No confirmation of who was inside those vehicles, but we did get...
And which direction they're going in.
Which direction they were going in.
Yeah.
We did get that confirmation earlier that those first 7 hostages had been transferred to the International Red Cross inside Gaza. They'll be making their way now into Israel. They'll be received onto a military base first. They'll be reunited with families. We can see the helicopters there waiting on that military base in southern Israel. They'll meet with their families, be reunited with their families for the first time in 2 years before then being transferred to hospitals where we can imagine they're going to need urgent care. James, what do you make of the pictures that you're seeing?
Well, we understand that President Trump will meet those families when he lands. I think he's due to land in Tel Aviv about 7:30 our time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that because of Trump's clear interest in the region, I think that he will have some credibility with some of those hostage families. Clearly, those are very important pictures. Donald Trump is watching them on Air Force One, as we are now. And I think that is a reflection of there will be some pride in his team at having been criticised by Democrats for supposedly being the peacemaker president who had 3 wars raging. We might now see one, albeit even temporarily, drawing towards a close. So I think he'll take some pride in that, and it's been clearly something that's exercised domestic opinion around the world. And so he will meet with those families, and I think they'll just be happy that they're home.
James, just hold that thought while we have a look at some other stories coming into the newsroom on this Monday morning. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch has written to Sir Keir Starmer demanding answers to questions surrounding the collapse of the Chinese spy charges against two men, which we were talking about. The Conservative leader criticised the Prime Minister's decision to travel to Egypt for the peace summit on Gaza. Badenoch is calling for senior ministers to set the public record straight in his absence.
Prince Andrew has made headlines again after emails revealed that he told convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, "We are in this together." The email contradicts the Duke of York's claim that he ended contact with the disgraced financier in 2010, as the email was dated the year after.
Sir David Benjamin Bathurst, the Admiral of the Fleet, has died. He was 89. The role is the highest rank within the Royal Navy, and the only other person with it is the King. Sir Benjamin passed away while visiting his son, the Governor of Gibraltar.
Now, we'll keep you across that breaking news as 7 hostages have been handed over to Israel. Michael Portillo is here with us next. This is GB News Breakfast with Eamonn and Ellie.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dawdney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Breakfast. Just some breaking news from Israel in the past few moments that those first 7 hostages have now been received by the IDF from the International Red Cross. They were released this morning by Hamas. We're waiting confirmation on the further 13 hostages. We are expecting 20 hostages in total to be handed over to Israel from Gaza, but confirmation in the past few moments that those first 7 hostages have been handed over and received by the IDF in Israel.
What a momentous day for those people, and they will receive the American president shortly. He's due to arrive in Tel Aviv, we reckon, at about 7:25. We'll bring you those pictures live. Right now, watching these pictures with us, the former Defence Minister under Margaret Thatcher, because we have him here to talk today about his memories of Margaret Thatcher on this, what would have been her 100th birthday. We welcome Michael Portillo. Michael, very good to see you.
Ellie and Eamonn, good morning. And, I was never in her cabinet, I'm afraid. I wasn't Defence Secretary under her. I was Defence Secretary under John Major, but I was a junior minister under her.
Yeah.
My first contacts with her were in the 1970s, before she became the Prime Minister, when she was still leader of the opposition. And so I went through that period when people were very uncertain as to what Margaret Thatcher would be, and we certainly had no idea what Thatcherism would be. What turned out, I think, was a lady of extraordinary certainty about what she believed. She always knew what she thought about everything. I think these came from sort of basic principles. They were inspired by her father, who had given his life to...
Also, Michael, maybe a moral code, maybe as well as a...
Surely a moral code. She inherited principles from her father, who was dedicated to public service. She was brought up during the Second World War, when she thought that Britain had fought alone for democracy, and she'd been part of a small shop in Grantham, and she brought these ideas to the Premiership. And I was astonished that whenever any topic came up, she never doubted what her own view was. And she was someone who was prepared to lead with extraordinary courage, I would say both moral and physical. Physical because she was under constant threat of death from the IRA. They almost killed her at Brighton, and she was always under that threat. And I think, really, ever since we've missed that quality of leadership.
Mm-hmm. What would you think of that leadership if she had been in charge, say, during COVID, the COVID crisis, as a scientist?
Well, I hope that as a scientist she would have taken more views than just the views of scientists. I mean, what I thought went wrong during COVID was we asked scientists as though they were infallible. We didn't include economists, educationalists, and other people who might tell us what would be the consequences of shutting down our economy and our education system. I think there was a deep imbalance, and I hope that she would have canvassed all views. But that's not a game I particularly want to play, actually, Eamonn, as to what Margaret Thatcher would have thought about things that happened 30 years after she left office. But what I do think is that she offered us an example of leadership. I think she did revive the British economy. I think it was entrepreneurial in its day, and we certainly played a part in world affairs. Today, the Prime Minister is being told by an American representative that he's delusional to think he played a part. There was no delusion that Margaret Thatcher
But I think the difference is I look at Margaret Thatcher and I see a leader, I look at Keir Starmer and I see a follower. I see a man who's...
Exactly.
Yeah, he's gone out to Egypt, because he feels he has to be there. He goes to India because he feels he has to be there. He's forever sucking up to China, India, America, whatever. I just don't feel we're leading. I feel we follow.
And what about making an argument? I mean, Margaret Thatcher could not be kept off television. She wanted to do the long-format interview, the 45-minute interview, in which she would argue her case, battle against Brian Warden, David Frost, the interviewers of the day. And now, people kind of, they deliver a soundbite and hide away. It was a very different sort of politics.
And she wasn't afraid to be disliked as well, which would be very different to the way that we perceive Sir Keir Starmer.
That is true. And the consequence, of course, of being willing to be disliked was that she won 3 general elections with huge majorities. I mean, isn't that the most wonderful irony?
Just some breaking news in the past few minutes. Got Israeli Defence Forces statement from them saying that those 7 returning hostages are being accompanied now by the IDF on their return to Israel. They will be undergoing an initial medical assessment. They say they've asked people inside Israel to act responsibly and sensitively, to respect the privacy of those returning hostages and to rely solely on official information. They say they're expecting to receive additional hostages to be transferred to the Red Cross later on this morning, that statement in the last few minutes from the Israeli Defence Force. What's your reaction to the scenes that you've seen this morning, Michael, in Hostage Square in Tel Aviv? I mean, we've been remarking on the celebratory nature, actually, of the scenes. Hundreds of people with Israeli flags and pictures of hostages.
I just reckon more sobering when those coffins appear.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely. It's very mixed emotions for me. I mean, we're not being allowed to see the hostages, but we're talking here about people who have been starved and beaten and made to dig their own graves and have not been treated for their injuries. I mean, and as Eamonn says, you know, there are more dead who are coming back than there are alive.
And 28 bodies we're waiting to receive, yes.
And then, I mean, looking to the future, there's no sign that I see that Hamas will comply with the elements of the Trump plan, which are disarmament and retirement from government in Gaza. So, I mean, at the moment, the signs are absolutely contrary to that.
But you know, all I was going to say to you is we could have used your exact same phrase against the IRA prior to the peace agreement in Northern Ireland, and yet, by and large, they haven't totally gone away. They've basically gone away.
You're hopeful, are you, Eamonn? Well,
well, no, I'm just saying. You think?
No, I understand this.
Yeah.
You know, a step is. I mean, this is a big step, and it's worth taking, of course. But I was asked for my reaction, and while I see the cheering crowds, because I understand that people want peace, what I don't know is whether we are going to get peace.
You don't feel particularly optimistic about longer-term peace in Gaza?
What stops there being peace is that the neighbours of Israel wish to destroy Israel. And for as long as that situation obtains, there won't be peace in any meaningful way. The two-state solution would imply that there were governments in the West Bank and governments in Gaza who were prepared to accept that Israel exists and deal with that reality. And we're so far from that.
And a big part of the story today is the release of the Palestinian prisoners and detainees, almost 2,000 of them. I mean, how can you guarantee peace? And obviously President Trump and those world leaders today will hope that they can. But how can you guarantee peace when a number of those Palestinian prisoners have in the past wanted to destroy the state of Israel?
Well, some of those being released today have been involved in the plotting of suicide bombings, of murders and so on. I believe that the plan is that they should not be returned to Gaza, but to foreign countries, one supposes Qatar or Iran. But of course, that doesn't prevent them filtering back to the battlefield. So yes, I mean, one of the things that Israel is being required to do today is to release a lot of high-value combatants who wish to destroy Israel and who will make them their way back to the battle area. So that's why I have mixed emotions.
What do you think about Britain's role in this peace deal? I mean, we heard, didn't we, the Education Secretary yesterday speaking to British media. She was later described, she said that Britain had played a key role in the peace deal and was later described as being delusional by the US ambassador to Israel.
That is delusional. The role that Britain has played has been counterproductive. Well, recognising a Palestinian state when there is no Palestinian state, when there is no Palestinian government, when there's no prospect of a government in Palestine that wouldn't be hostile, warlike and determined to destroy Israel, that was a counterproductive move.
I've always wanted to ask you, you weren't in cabinet when Margaret Thatcher had to step down, and she called everybody in one by one, the cabinet, and she said, do I stay or do I go, or words to that effect.
Yes.
If you had have been in cabinet then, what would you have said to her?
But it's not a hypothetical, it's what I did say, because I saw her later. She'd seen all the cabinet, I was not in the cabinet, and I pleaded with her not to go. And she said to me, why? All the cabinet has told me I should go. Why are you telling me something different? This was her tone of voice, by the way. Why are you telling me something different? I said, because you've had a leadership election here, and you haven't canvassed a single one of the voters who are only members of Parliament. I said you haven't written to one of them, you haven't stopped them in the corridor, you haven't asked anyone for their vote. And I reckon that now, if you stay in the campaign, because she was still a candidate for the leadership, and you call them into your office one by one and get them to look you in the eye and tell you that they're going to vote against you, half of them will be carried out of this room in tears. And she looked at me like she'd never even thought of this. She had never thought of mounting a campaign. Her attitude was that she was the Prime Minister, that it was beneath her dignity to be, grubbing around for votes to keep her job. You may remember she was in Northern Ireland, I think, on the Friday. She was at a peace summit on the Monday and Tuesday. She was absent from the country when the votes were cast and the votes were counted and the vote was announced. And she'd had no campaign. Can you imagine? The greatest campaigner of British politics had launched no campaign when it most mattered to keep her job.
What was your relationship like with her? Because it sounds from that anecdote there that you could speak quite frankly to her, that she respected you.
I was much younger than she, of course, and that meant she could speak to me very fiercely. And I wasn't insulted. I wasn't on my dignity. I wasn't a cabinet minister. So when she spoke to me the way she spoke to Ken Clarke or to Michael Heseltine, I was not offended. They were. They got very, very upset about it, but I did not. But yes, I'd been with her from... I mean, in 1979, I briefed her for her press conferences during that election. So I saw her every morning for, the best part of a month, during moments of high tension, when we thought we were going to lose, when we thought we were going to win, the tides of politics flowing both ways. So I saw through those moments of crisis, and by the way, developed a very strong admiration. I remember when the polls went against us during that election, and it was announced to her, well, I think I announced to her, I said, the polls are bad today. She said, I did not crow when I was ahead, and I will not whinge now that I'm behind.
Right. What about the Conservatives and the leaders of all the parties? I mean, have we seen her like ever since? I suspect no. Do we need her like again, or was she off her time?
No, I don't think she was of her time. I think you could have a leader at any time, and the world does have leaders. I mean, Netanyahu is a leader, Trump is a leader, Putin is a leader. There are leaders. No, she wasn't just a figure of her time. At any time, people can offer leadership. And I think one would be surprised what would happen if a leader-like figure stepped forward. It would be transformational. I mean, any party could win the next election if that party had a leader-like leader.
Yeah. Are you surprised at how your life turned out? I mean, you could have been leader of the Conservative Party, you could have been a Prime Minister at one stage, and now you're, phenomenally well-known television presenter on a number of channels, and a personality, as it were, and an expert now on railways and various things, and travels around the world.
Well, my life has been a wonderful adventure. I mean, I feel so fortunate that I did not become leader of the Conservative Party. The opportunity arose for me when we were going into a bleak, long period of opposition. I would have been done away with by the Tories within months, if not a couple of years, as Ian Duncan Smith was, for example. So I feel very fortunate that didn't happen to me, and that I've had a second life, a second career. I mean, the important thing is this, isn't it? One only has one life. And if you can pack into one life 2 careers...
You're packing a lot in.
Then I think you're jolly lucky. And I've always loved what I do. I think that's the most fortunate thing in life, isn't it?
But your political brain is still active, still very active, and your contributions are relevant and whatever.
I think relevant, we're putting it too strongly. But
well, would you have a longing? Is there part of you that thinks, I would still love to be involved at a high level?
No, there's a part of me that thinks, I can't wait to do my next rail journey.
Yeah, and congratulations on having a diesel train, was it named after you?
A diesel locomotive, yes. A freight-hauling diesel locomotive.
Called the Michael Portillo.
Mm-hmm. I think without the
okay.
No definite article.
Congratulations. Congratulations. The pictures here live from Israel that we're all watching this morning, we're seeing today, and we are awaiting the arrival of Air Force One. President Trump in the air, due to touch down Tel Aviv by any minute now, and we'll bring you those pictures live.
Yeah, and if you are just joining us this morning, that breaking news that the first 7 Israeli hostages have been received now by the Israeli Defense Force. They are making their way back into Israel. We won't have any pictures of these hostages. That's been agreed on both sides. We have seen before those displays by Hamas, but there will be no handover ceremony out of respect for the dignity and the condition you can imagine these 7 hostages will be in after 2 years of Hamas captivity, but we're seeing pictures there on the right-hand side of the screen of Hostage Square in Tel Aviv, where overnight hundreds of people have gathered with Israeli flags and pictures of hostages. Scenes of joy and jubilation this morning, and also anxiety, people in tears, people shaking, anxiously awaiting news of their loved ones. It has been a moment of national unity for Israel, awaiting these first pictures. Michael Portillo is still with us in the studio. What's your reaction to the scenes that you're seeing in Israel this morning?
We've also got to remember there is another place that will have reaction to tens of thousands of deaths as well, which we're not seeing at the moment. But that's how divisive this is.
Well, the scenes from the square, I think, show that for all the things that people have said about Israel, there are so many Israelis who have been longing for peace. Of course they've been longing for peace, as well as the return of the hostages. And that's what you're seeing there. You're seeing the celebration of the prospect of peace. And I think, I was saying before how cautious I felt about the whole thing, but of course I think people must have their day of joy. And the joy of the return of the hostages, despite their horrendous condition, will obviously be deeply moving and transformational for the families.
And it is right to remember, Michael, and you mentioned it earlier, that there are families, 28 of them today, grieving for their losses, whose bodies will be returned to Israel.
Yes, and I wasn't sure whether Eamonn was referring just down to Gaza, but I mean, one must obviously also remember that huge numbers of people have lost their lives in Gaza. And I mean, my own rather contentious view would be that while we're releasing 20 hostages today, 2 million people remain hostage to Hamas in Gaza. That would be my perspective.
We have had this tweet from, or a post on X, I should say, from Steve Witkoff, who said he would like to acknowledge the vital role of the United Kingdom in assisting and coordinating efforts that have led us to this historic day in Israel. In particular, I want to recognise the incredible input and tireless efforts of the National Security Advisor, Jonathan Powell. What do you make of that post there?
Well, I think it's very polite to begin with, but also, I mean, I do know Jonathan Powell. Eamonn will know him as well, I'm sure. Jonathan is a class act. He's a terrific operator, and it may well be that Jonathan Powell has been helpful behind the scenes. But obviously, that comment is meant to put right what was floating through the airwaves before, which was the Americans apparently having said that Starmer was being delusional about having played a role.
Do you think it's interesting that he singled out Jonathan Powell there?
I do, because Jonathan Powell, at the moment, is in the crosshairs for his alleged role in the Chinese debacles. So, yes, I think it's highly significant. I think that is the Americans coming to the rescue of Jonathan Powell.
Being so associated with Peter Mandelson as well. But, integral in what went on in Northern Ireland, I mean, as Tony Blair's security advisor there, as to what went on there. So he knows these scenes and he knows what's involved. But, Michael, what was Britain's role in what we're seeing here today? I think that passed me by. I'm not really sure what Britain is taking credit for. I mean, we have donated now £100 million in terms of aid.
I don't think it would be a reference to that. I assume what's being alluded to now in the role of Jonathan Powell will have been movements behind the scenes, I don't know, journeys that we don't know about to Qatar, possibly contacts with those representing Hamas. I remember Jonathan Powell telling me a story about being driven in a taxi to a council estate, I don't know, somewhere near Derry, I think, and being delivered to a council house. By armed men, and they're meeting.
Was this to meet the provisionals?
To meet the provost, at a time when they were armed to the teeth, and this, was apparently quite a dangerous thing to do. So, as you say, Jonathan Powell does have experience of what it's like to be, moving in these
mixing these circles
in fairly dangerous circumstances. Yes, and maybe mixing with people that you don't care to mix with too much.
And maybe in those days mixing with the likes of Martin McGuinness, who then becomes a respected politician.
I understand your theme here, Eamonn. It's true. I mean, again and again, those who have been war leaders and those who have committed atrocities emerge as political leaders. I fear that we're a very long way from that.
We've just had an update from the Israeli military in the past few moments that those 7 first hostages that have been released have now crossed the border into the state of Israel. So they are no longer in Gaza. That will be a huge sigh of relief for those people, not only in Hostage Square, but also those on the military base in southern Israel waiting to receive those hostages, that those first 7 are safely out of Gaza, Michael.
We talk about the politics of all of this and the diplomacy involved and whatever. Trump, let's talk about President Trump here. You probably have seen very little like it, his direct talk. He was talking about we're going to have a great celebration, we're going to do... I mean, I'm not sure I would be sounding as happy or as upbeat as he is about things here, bearing in mind the consequences, the deaths and things that have taken place. How much credit would you give Trump in getting this done? And could other people have got this done as directly as he has?
I think the answer to the second question is easier. No, I don't think anybody else could have got it done, and therefore I suppose the credit has to go to Trump. But of course I find it very puzzling because I see here a man who's incapable of constructing a sentence in the English language, and yet, you know, somehow he achieves the man who claimed to be the great deal maker and offered everything to Vladimir Putin on a plate, and then was surprised that didn't produce peace. So I see him so inarticulate and so clumsy that I find it difficult to understand how he achieves these things. But everyone is giving him credit. I mean, of course, these things will have been team efforts. If he's picked the right staffers, that's to his credit. If he's got the right people in the administration this time, I find it hard to imagine that he has the patience to have achieved much personally, but he is at the head of something which really has achieved a great deal. And to be at the head of something that's achieved a great deal is to be worthy of credit.
And it speaks to his power, doesn't it, Michael, that, I mean, he's managed to gather 20 world leaders. He mentioned this peace summit, as it's being described by the White House in Egypt, on Friday. 20 world leaders are there today awaiting President Trump. I mean, it speaks to his convening power.
It absolutely does. And it would be quite amusing, you know, today to go through what those 20 leaders may have said about Trump in the past, the disobliging things they may have said. And now, I mean, he rubs the lamp and they appear, don't they?
It seems that way. And it seems as though with Bridget Phillipson yesterday not heralding Donald Trump, not mentioning his key role in this peace deal, and she was very quickly told off by the US ambassador to Israel. It seems as though Keir Starmer learnt that lesson very early on, that Donald Trump must be acknowledged, he must be congratulated.
Yes, I mean, we were talking about Margaret Thatcher earlier. It doesn't do much for our national dignity, or indeed the national dignity of France or Spain or Germany or any of the others who are going almost literally to kowtow today to Donald Trump. I do think in the days of Margaret Thatcher, the role of Britain was less ambiguous than it is this morning. We wouldn't kind of be debating it in this way. But anyway, I mean, Donald Trump is in a globally dominant position. He entirely makes global news. You don't hear about anybody else in the United States. It's extraordinary, the position of dominance.
Michael, I'd like now to bring in the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice, who's available to talk to us now. And Richard, we were just talking about Donald Trump there and what credit he should get for what is coming about between Israel and Gaza. Would you give him credit?
110% total credit. I was in Israel just 2 weeks ago. I met President Herzog, I met Foreign Minister Saar. Let me tell you, the whole of Israel, from the top of government to everybody, are so furious with Keir Starmer, with this Labour government, for abandoning and betraying Israel in their hour of need. And frankly, for our Prime Minister to go to that signing ceremony, he's literally gate-crashing Donald Trump's success. It's just ridiculous. And we've now had confirmation from the American administration that actually recognizing a state of Palestine hindered the ceasefire and peace negotiations.
We're just seeing Air Force One coming in to land in Tel Aviv here, just as you speak, Richard. So the president will be on the ground shortly, doing what he's going to do in Israel.
Yeah, it's going to be meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu and then meeting with hostage families a little bit later on before addressing Israeli Parliament. So we'll bring that all to you on GB News Breakfast. So, Richard, we'll stay with you, but just be aware we may need to come across those live pictures of Donald Trump. What's your reaction to the news that we've had in the past hour or so? Those first 7 hostages have been released from Gaza, and we have just received news in the past few moments that they've crossed safely into Israel. A huge sigh of relief.
Yeah, I'm actually quite emotional because I stood in the house where 2 of those hostages, Gali and Ziv Berman, were. Where they were hijacked from. I saw the burnt-out wreck of that kibbutz. So, yeah, it's pretty emotional, actually. What it must feel like. One of my team members is actually in Hostage Square in Tel Aviv as we speak. She's just sent me a message about the incredible excitement, enthusiasm, energy there. So it's a very, very emotional moment.
What hope do you have, Richard, of eternal peace in the Middle East, as President Trump would describe it? Do you think that this can hold, bearing in mind that this is only phase 1 of a 20-point peace plan?
Well, we all hope and pray that this can lead to a strong, enduring, lasting peace. Of course, it's difficult. Of course, there'll be hiccups along the way. But goodness me, hasn't President Trump, he has put a huge amount of effort, and we're seeing the early stages of that success. And everybody's now got to play their role in ensuring that it does last. And we can then move from the terrible suffering and deaths that we've seen to a position of peace. We know it's difficult. We know how long it takes. We know 25 plus years on in Northern Ireland, it's still difficult. The pain is still there. So it won't be easy, but this is a massive starting point and a really encouraging moment.
Richard, as Britain's role, you mentioned there that you weren't just sure of what the Prime Minister had to contribute, and yet he's out there in Egypt. What do you see as Britain's role in all of this?
I think our role, frankly, is one where we've hindered the process recently. We've been utterly humiliated on the international stage. We've had the US ambassador to Israel overnight has just tweeted that Bridget Phillipson was delusional in her comments yesterday on the media round. So, frankly, we start from a pretty low base, and under this government, I don't have much hope. But under a reform government, we will restore ourselves to the top table, and we will lead from the front. Of that, your viewers and listeners can be absolutely assured.
We're celebrating or commemorating the 100th birthday of Margaret Thatcher today. She led from the front, didn't she?
She absolutely did, and I'm looking forward to going to a celebratory event this evening. She absolutely led from the front in many ways, and of course there are difficult moments through that period, and no one's perfect. But Britain had a much stronger place on the world stage, and we were a much richer nation back then because she recognised the benefits of the oil and gas industry. To be a rich nation, you've got to have cheap energy. She understood about growth, about deregulating, about cutting wasteful government spending, and those are all the key, in a sense, they're the key principles that Reform UK stand by to get this country going again.
We've just got pictures now of President Donald Trump upon Air Force One. It has touched down in Israel. A very brief trip for him today. He'll be meeting with hostage families and Benjamin Netanyahu, and then heading to Egypt for this peace summit later on this afternoon. We've just had a post from Steve Witkoff on X, who says he'd like to acknowledge the vital role that the United Kingdom has played in this historic day in Israel. In particular, he says, I want to recognise the incredible input and the tireless efforts of the National Security Advisor, Jonathan Powell. What do you make of that post on X?
Well, there's going to be a debate in Parliament later about the input of Jonathan Powell on the Chinese spying scandal. So Let's wait and see. I don't think Jonathan Powell should be in his job for much longer, and we'll have to see. But
significant that Steve Witkoff has name-checked Jonathan Powell, then?
Yeah, well, things will have gone on behind the scenes for sure. But Jonathan Powell has a lot of questions to answer. His role over the ludicrous giving away of the Chagos Islands, his role in the collapse of the Chinese spying scandal. Those are key issues that affect the United Kingdom that we're going to be asking serious questions about.
The headline in the Mail today, Richard, is this whole Chinese case has revealed an uneasy truth. A shadowy cabal of men running Britain, but our Prime Minister is not one of them. It sounds as if you would agree with that.
Wholeheartedly, I think the Prime Minister is the puppet who's being sort of pulled in all directions by people like Jonathan Powell. And frankly, given the track record of what we're seeing, you have to ask, whose side is he on?
OK. Richard, thank you very much for asking the question. We'll ask our viewers and listeners to answer it. Thank you very much indeed. And remember, you can have your say as we watch Air Force One taxi there in Tel Aviv and lining up for that red carpet there. President Trump, a matter of fact, there they are. They're ready to receive, including Prime Minister Netanyahu there.
Yeah, his wife Sarah's there as well as US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, Trump's advisor Jared Kushner, his wife and President Trump's daughter Ivanka Trump there as well.
Norman Baker now joins us in the studio with Dawn Neeson. Norman, there they are. They got that organised pretty quickly. Got that the plane taxied rightly into position. And how much credit can Donald Trump take for all of this?
I think he can take considerable credit because he was the only person that Netanyahu was going to listen to. I mean, nobody else in the world was able to.
But why does he listen to? Just explain to people that's economic power, that's funding.
Economic power, it's military power. I mean, billions, literally billions of pounds being handed by the Americans in terms of weapons to Israel. There's also tremendous political power. I mean, what's been happening in Gaza has had to be okayed by Trump, otherwise it wouldn't have happened in the same way. And now he's pulled the plug on it. So, I mean, America is a sleeping giant, and it can really influence the world's events. I mean, Trump has to some extent pulled America back from international engagement, for the UN, for example, in all sorts of ways. But when he decides to do something, the power of America is such that it can really influence matters. I mean, I hope he'll do the same thing with Ukraine. If he starts pressuring Russia financially, then they'll come to the table.
It's interesting, he was asked about Ukraine just before he got on Air Force One to fly to Israel. He said, well, that can wait until I get home. But he does see himself as a peacemaker, doesn't he? I mean, he declared just before he got on the plane, war is over in Gaza.
Well, I think that's pushing it a bit, to be perfectly frank with you. War's not over in Gaza, and Hamas is still there, and the Israeli Defence Force is still there. But, you know, I hope what you'll take from this is that, first of all, it's popular what he's done, and secondly, it's actually achieved something. And if he may then say, let's do this in Ukraine, I hope he will.
And what does Israel achieve for him? They are his eyes and ears in the Middle East, aren't they?
Who?
Israel.
Israel, well, absolutely they are. But he's also got relations, of course, with Saudi Arabia and other such countries, because there's been long-standing arrangements, mostly based on oil, as a matter of fact, between some of the Arab states in America.
And that relationship was key, wasn't it, to have those Arab states on side to make this peace deal come about?
I mean, I think the Arab states, perfectly frank with you, could have done a bit more than they did do in the run-up to all the situation. They have been quite acquiescent in what's been going on in a way that's not been terribly helpful.
What about the situation in Egypt today? I'm not sure, is it Cairo or Sharm el-Sheikh that they're meeting?
Sharm el-Sheikh,
So what about Egypt's whole role in all of this? Can they take credit?
Well, I mean, behind the scenes, it played some role, I think, but not particularly a great role. I mean, Egypt has been quite quiet ever since it came to a deal with Israel many decades, well, a couple of decades ago now. There was the first country in the Middle East to do a deal with Israel, and it's been quite compliant ever since, really. And, of course, they've shut the border to people from Palestine because Israel wanted the border shut, so they've been doing what Israel wanted to a large degree.
Dawn, as we're just awaiting President Trump to walk down the steps here of Air Force One into Israel, we've just got breaking news in the past few minutes that Trump is to receive Israel's highest civilian honour, He's going to be awarded the Israeli Presidential Medal of Honor by the Israeli president. Going to be presented in the coming months.
Well, it doesn't surprise. I mean, you saw the reaction in Hostage Square when Donald Trump's name was mentioned. There were cheers. When Netanyahu's name was mentioned, there were boos. So, I mean, he is incredibly popular because regardless of what you think of Trump, regardless of what you think of his politics, he has done this. And going back to what we were saying about the Arab nations becoming involved, Egypt are going to be part of the initial peacekeeping force that goes into Gaza when Hamas have supposedly disarmed, whether that actually happens or not. But Egypt and United Arab Emirates are playing a big part in that. So, you know, again, going back to what Norman was saying, I think the United Arab Emirates and those countries around there have done a lot behind the scenes as well. And only Donald Trump, I think, could have got everybody round that table to agree to this. I mean, as you said, Norman, I mean, Egypt have kept those borders shut. They know the trouble that the Palestinians and the Gaza and the Hamas can cause to Egypt as a country. So that's why they've kept the borders shut. So it's very interesting. They are willing to put literally boots on the ground as a peacekeeping force.
They are also one of the only signatories of the Middle East peace plan this afternoon. So it's going to be signed in Egypt by the US, Egypt, Qatar and Turkey. So all other attendees, so that's Britain and France and the like, are going to stand behind the table and observe. What do you make of that, Norman?
Well, I think that's probably appropriate. It's interesting, by the way, just that Steve Witkoff has been praising Britain's engagement, and at the same time as the ambassador, the American Mike Huckabee, has been calling it delusional. I mean, the Americans
he didn't actually praise Britain's involvement. He praised Jonathan Powell.
Well, of course, he is British. Yeah. But there is, you know, you speak with forked tongue to some extent, and wonder if that was coordinated.
Do you think it's interesting that he was name-checked, Jonathan Powell, in that post by Steve Witkoff?
Yes.
For his incredible input and tireless efforts.
I think it was extraordinary, actually. If it's true, I mean, I assume it's true if he says so. But nevertheless, I mean, to pick out a particular official from a different country for praise, there's something else going on there.
I think there's a lot more going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. But, I mean, the important thing is that we do have the hostages home and, you know, even the ones that haven't made it back alive are going to be reunited.
Powell is legendary in Northern Irish terms, you know, having been Tony Blair's right-hand man and negotiating the peace agreement that was in Northern Ireland 30 years ago and dealing with the terrorists and things there. So he was very much behind the scenes and very, very powerful.
And let's just say that was a great success. The Northern Ireland Peace Agreement It was tremendous, given what was going on in the Troubles for 20 years or so before that. I mean, it was a real achievement.
Do you mind if I ask you a question, Eamonn? Every time we talk about this, the peace deal that's on the table now in the Middle East, it is compared to the Northern Ireland deal. Do you see it that way?
No. I mean, this is a war. There are people who will say Northern Ireland was a war, but not on this scale, not with the casualties that were involved in the bombings and whatever. What I do see in common is that the Powells of this world had to talk to people who were deemed to be terrorists and bring them around the table. And you know, can that happen between Israel and Hamas? Will somebody be negotiating in the middle for that? Because that's what will bring about peace, to empower, to embolden Hamas. I don't know why I say that, but they have to get something out of this. They're not just going to go away, as Jerry Adams once said.
You have to negotiate, actually, with terrorists or whoever it happens to be. You have to. And we were right to talk to the IRA back in the day. You know, the alternative to talking to people you don't like is an endless war.
If you are joining us this morning, a large delegation of Israeli officials, Benjamin Netanyahu, his wife Sarah, all awaiting President Donald Trump at the airport here in Tel Aviv. We are waiting for him to come down those steps of Air Force One. It has landed now in Israel. Also on the red carpet there is the ambassador to Israel, the US ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, Jared Kushner, that's Trump's son-in-law, who's helped to broker this final ceasefire agreement, and his wife, Ivanka Trump, all there as well. You can see the red carpet has been rolled out on the tarmac.
There is the president.
Troops as well. And there is President Donald Trump there, receiving a hero's welcome, you might say, a fist pump from the president there as he steps out of Air Force One and heads down those steps into Israel for what is going to be an action-packed day. He's going to be meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu on the tarmac here in Tel Aviv.
It's also going to be an emotional day because he's going to meet the relations of people who were held hostage and people who lost loved ones as well. So all of that will be very, very emotional.
Very moving indeed, yeah. And there will be no pictures of that. That is closed off to the press for the dignity of the hostages and of the families as well. And he'll later be addressing the parliament in Israel before then going to Egypt for a peace summit later on this afternoon. So there we are, President Trump shaking hands with Benjamin Netanyahu before they go on to meet hostage families.
It is an historic day, let's face it. That's sometimes overused, that word, but it is an historic day today. The real test will come what happens next. Whether or not this breakthrough, because it is a breakthrough, can be built upon, or whether, in fact, Hamas resort to violence, whether or not the Israeli Defence Force starts misbehaving, as it were, in Gaza. We obviously hope not, but we don't know.
But a huge sigh of relief, Dawn, and we must remind ourselves that that's welcome news this morning. 7 hostages have crossed safely into Israel. We're awaiting news of the other 13 that we know will be handed over to Israel today. But that's a huge sigh of relief that they've crossed over safely and will be reunited with their families shortly.
And, Ellie, I think the important thing today is it's been done in a dignified way, unlike the scenes we saw with the earlier hostage releases where it was the women were handed over, amongst horrific scenes of sort of like, not just Hamas fighters, but the ordinary people of Gaza, very threatening, crowding around the cars that were handing the women out, the women looking terrified, being made to pose like they've been on holiday for a few weeks. I mean, that was horrendous after what those women have been through. I'm so glad we haven't seen that again, and we haven't seen the actual hostages in the handover, and you can only hope and pray that they are going to be, in as well as they can be expected after 2 years in those tunnels.
Yeah, if you are wondering why we haven't got pictures of those hostages, as we've seen before, it's because the agreement, as Dawn alluded to there, has been made on both sides, that there will be no pictures out of dignity and out of respect for the condition of those hostages, that will not be shared with the press. We may receive pictures later on once they're in hospital and once they've been checked over, but we won't be seeing anything in this hostage release process. And that is right, isn't it, Norman?
That's absolutely right. And Dawn mentioned the word dignity. That's exactly the word that should be applied. And as we said earlier in the programme, there are obviously happiness for the families of the hostages who are being returned, but there's also poignancy, I think, for those who have lost people.
Hello there, very good morning to you, wherever you're watching or wherever you are listening. These are live pictures coming in from Tel Aviv. And now you can see the American President Donald Trump greeting his Israeli delegation there. Air Force One has landed, and a handover will happen today. 7 hostages who have now crossed the Israeli border as Israel prepares to release around 2,000 Palestinian prisoners in exchange.
Yes, both sides reaffirming their commitment to following the peace plan. Well, just hours before the Prime Minister is set to join world leaders in Egypt for the historic signing of the Gaza peace plan, Donald Trump has just landed in Tel Aviv in the past few moments. Air Force One has touched down. He is speaking there to his daughter Ivanka and to Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, who has been a central figure in this peace plan negotiation process. So those are live pictures we're bringing you now in Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv, and where Donald Trump is receiving a hero's welcome. It must be said, the red carpet has quite literally been rolled out for him. We can see a live band playing there, and the Israeli military also there to welcome President Donald Trump for this day in history.
But Norman, we're talking about the peace committee that is awaiting in Egypt, and up until now, we were told that Tony Blair was to lead that. He was to be the head of that. That seems to be in serious doubt now.
Well, I hope it isn't serious doubt, to be perfectly frank with you. I mean, Tony Blair, from my perspective, launched a war with George Bush which was illegal in international terms, which caused massive damage to individuals, the population at large in Iraq. And I don't think his record, either then or as a so-called peace envoy some years later, bears very much scrutiny. I think he went to the Middle East, quite frankly, to make some money for himself, and I think he should be kept well away from anything happening now.
I mean, Dawn, President Trump is the man of the moment in the Middle East, isn't he? And I've just been looking at this breaking news. Air Force One, as it flew over Tel Aviv, on the beach, people had written "thank you" in the sand to President Trump.
Absolutely, you can't get away from the fact that he is a hero to many people in Israel for what he has achieved. I mean, he's achieved... There's no other person on the planet, I don't think, that could have got this to happen. I mean, yeah, you can argue it should have happened sooner, but, you know, we are here now and we are watching these historic pictures of Donald Trump in Israel to meet the families of the hostages, and you can only imagine the hell that they have been through. Yeah. And he has achieved this, and that's why, you know, in Israel, he is going to be a hero. And I think, you know, even the most, you know, the most deranged anti-Trump people will have to admit that this is something that we should celebrate.
Norman, do you think anybody else could have achieved this? Do you think anybody else could have made this happen in the time frame that we're speaking about here?
No, because nobody else, no other country has got the leverage on Israel, which the United States has got. And as Don says, it could have happened earlier, but it's happening now. So let's welcome that at least, and let's hope it leads to even more progress. And if Donald Trump is happy with the celebrations he's seeing, and the celebrations from the people who are going to be returned alive, as it were, in their families, then he may be encouraged to take further steps to achieve peace. Let's remember he wants a Nobel Peace Prize, and that may have been on motivation, may not have been, I don't know. But I mean, the way it works, incidentally, on the Peace Prize is that nominations close at the end of January each year, and therefore the Peace Prize this year will have been related to events which happened last year. So he may be looking to next year, and if he does more of this sort of activity, then maybe he'll get it. Who knows?
I think that's an important point, because if this holds, he will be surely the only winner for this prize.
Well, there you saw the back of the head of Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu there, President Herzog there as well. All of this happening live as we speak at Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv, as the Prime Minister awaits to board his vehicle and the cavalcade will make its way. We think the first trip, the first visit will be to relations of people who have been held prisoner or hostage.
Yes, and this comes as news that 7 hostages, those first 7 hostages, have been released by Hamas. They are now inside Israel. They are heading to that military base in southern Israel, where we can assume President Trump will be heading now shortly, where the hostage families are awaiting their loved ones. And we've also...
We hear that there's more hostages are going to be handed over imminently. Red Cross on its way to another meeting point in Gaza to receive more hostages.
Yes, we're hoping that's some, if not all, of the 13 hostages that are expected to be handed over today.
The internal politics of this, if I may say so, is that Israeli population at large has been protesting week in, week out in prominent locations in Israel, because not only has Netanyahu not got the hostages released, but he's actually failed to negotiate to get them released. He's kept the war going. And the Israeli population, I think, is looking at this and saying, our Prime Minister's let us down, and it's taken an American president to come and get the hostages out.
Do you think that's the way it will be received in Israel, John?
I think Netanyahu is in serious trouble politically. I mean, before this started, he wasn't very popular, and there are all sorts of conspiracy theories about what happened there. But I think it'll be very interesting to see where Israel does go. Now, they've got an election coming up. Whether Netanyahu will retain power or not is another matter. I mean, he wasn't popular. Whether this has actually helped his popularity, his name was booed in Hostage Square when it was read out. So
there's the President and the Prime Minister together there. That must be a complete security nightmare when you think of the situation there, and arms available to anyone who has a particular dislike against one or the pair of them.
OK, Dawn, Norman, do stay with us. We're going to cross now to Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp. Good morning to you, Mr. Philp.
Good morning.
We're just seeing live pictures there of President Donald Trump, who has arrived in Israel, where he'll be meeting the families of the hostages and later addressing Israeli parliament. What's your reaction to the news this morning that 7 hostages have been released so far by Hamas?
Well, it's welcome news that those 7 people who have been in captivity now for over 2 years have finally been released, and hopefully later on this morning the rest of the hostages will be released as well, who have been in captivity for so long, held by Hamas, the terrorist organisation. And let's hope this is the beginning of a process which not only leads to peace in Gaza, the removal of Hamas from any kind of control of Gaza, but also ultimately the establishment of a 2-state solution so Palestine and Israel can coexist in peace. So this could be, I think, a historic day, but let's keep in our minds today those hostages who have suffered so much.
Well, how historic,
and of course,
Chris,
civilians in Gaza for whom relief is coming as well.
Chris, how historic is it that our own Prime Minister is there? Well, he's there in Egypt anyway as part of the peace plan that is going to gather there. What is your reaction to Keir Starmer being there and sharing in all of this?
Well, he's got a bit of a cheek, to be honest, because as far as I can see, this peace deal has nothing whatsoever to do with Keir Starmer or his government. In fact, the American ambassador to Israel has said, I think yesterday or the day before, this had nothing whatsoever to do with Keir Starmer's Labour government. And I think Marco Rubio, the American Secretary of State, said that the premature recognition which Keir Starmer's government gave a few weeks ago actually undermined the peace process and made things more difficult. So I think, to be quite honest with you, Eamonn, he's got a cheek, he's got some brass neck, showing up, trying to claim some credit for something that is nothing whatsoever to do with him. And in fact, if anything, he probably made it harder with his actions.
Something that may have had something to do with him, which is the Chinese prosecution case against those 2 British individuals, the spying case. And you would prefer, as I understand it, Chris, that he was in the House today answering questions on that.
Well, precisely. Instead of running off overseas to claim credit for something that's nothing to do with him, he should be behind me in Parliament answering the very serious questions Keir Starmer has to answer about why it was his government chose to withhold evidence which the government has in its possession, which, if they wanted to, they could have handed over to the Crown Prosecution Service, who'd been asking for the evidence for many, many months. But instead, Keir Starmer's government chose to withhold that evidence, causing the China spy trial to collapse. And the reason for that is that the Labour government are more interested in kowtowing to the Chinese for economic reasons to help bail them out of their financial mess that Labour has created. They're more interested in that than they are in protecting our national security. And Keir Starmer now needs to, their story keeps changing, the government's story keeps changing every time something they say is proven to be untrue. So Keir Starmer now needs to tell us who exactly decided to withhold this evidence. Many people say Jonathan Powell was intimately involved in that decision. Was Keir Starmer himself aware of all of this going on? We need answers to those questions. The Labour government's story keeps changing. First of all, back in September, that one of their ministers claimed to me in Parliament that the Labour government had no idea what was going on, nothing to do with them, it was all down to the CPS. And the Crown Prosecution Service were then so angry, they wrote 3 public letters exposing that as untrue. And that's why we need Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, in Parliament today, answering these questions. What did he know and when? What exactly did Jonathan Powell have to do with this? Who took the decision in government to withhold this evidence? All of these questions are completely unanswered at the moment. No wonder Keir Starmer has decided to go and hide in Egypt today.
I mean, Mr. Fook, you're saying that Keir Starmer has nothing to do with the Middle East peace plan. Steve Witkoff would disagree with you. He's posted on X this morning saying he'd like to acknowledge the vital role that the United Kingdom has played in assisting and coordinating efforts that have led to this historic day in Israel. In particular, he says, I want to recognise the incredible input and tireless efforts of the National Security Advisor, Jonathan Powell. What do you make of that post, and what do you make of that name check by Steve Witkoff?
Well, first of all, the Secretary of State Marco Rubio, so that's the equivalent of the American Foreign Secretary, and the American Ambassador to Israel, Ambassador Huckabee, were not saying what you just read out. They've been saying the opposite of what Witkoff apparently said. So why he has come out with this at the last minute, I am not sure. And maybe this name check for Jonathan Powell is some sort of desperate attempt to save Jonathan Powell's job. Clearly, Jonathan Powell is very much, the spotlight is on him, the finger is pointing in his direction, and as far as I'm aware, his position, his job, he's not a civil servant, by the way, he's a political appointee. His job is hanging by a thread, and I wonder if he's made a phone call and asked for a favour in a desperate attempt to save his job, when there are so many questions about his conduct here in the UK in connection with the China spying scandal. This just strikes me as a rather desperate manoeuvre.
What hope do you have, Mr. Philp, that this 20-point peace plan in Israel and Gaza is going to come about in fullness and will hold?
Well, I've got quite a lot of hope, because if the American administration puts its full diplomatic weight behind it and uses all of the means at its disposal, financial and otherwise, to make it happen, and Arab states in the region are behind it as well, countries like Egypt and Qatar are behind it, I think it does have a prospect of working. And obviously the peace plan, the 20-point peace plan, isn't just about the release of hostages and getting aid in to help civilians in Gaza. It's also about the removal of Hamas, which is a terrorist organisation, from any role in running Gaza. It's also about establishing, ultimately, a two-state solution where the Palestinians have their own sovereign state, living in peace and security alongside a safe and secure Israel. Now, I'm sure the road to getting that plan fully implemented is not going to be easy, but if the United States of America and some of those neighbouring Arab countries like Egypt and countries like Qatar that have a lot of influence in Gaza and Palestine, if they're behind it, I do have some optimism it can happen. And it'd be a good thing if it does, because both Israelis and Palestinians have suffered for a long time from the conflict in that region, and it'd be a good thing for everybody there to bring those hostilities to a conclusion.
Very much indeed, Shadow Home Secretary. We've got to leave it there. Thank you, as we bring you live pictures from Hostage Square and the anticipation there. Robert Fox, defence editor at The Standard, joins us in studio, and I was just talking there about what a security nightmare. Netanyahu and Trump in the one car there, heading off through Tel Aviv.
Very unusual.
Yeah.
Very unusual. But the whole thing is a security nightmare, as you've been indicating, and touch wood, it's been going very smoothly. This is the interesting thing, and there's a lot of political carping and backwards and forwards, and I don't know how Jonathan Powell has somehow got into the name-checking business here, but I think that the Israelis are very, very accomplished at this. But that having been said, the awful threat that they have on their roads with car bombs, with things like bus bombs and so on, the sweeping of that site must have been something absolutely considerable. And of course, the Israelis are second to none at electronic surveillance.
I've been privy to follow the Secret Service around while they were security checking Belfast in anticipation of President Clinton arriving. My goodness me, nothing left unturned, and that was Belfast. That's Tel Aviv, which, goodness me, I just don't know what would be involved with that or how they could possibly secure the area.
A positive sign on progress, Robert, from the Israeli Defence Force just now. The Red Cross is on its way to an additional meeting point in southern Gaza, where several more hostages are going to be handed over to them. So it looks as though things are progressing.
It does look as if all 20 known to be alive will get out today, which is a tremendous achievement. Then we get the sad story of those died.
But there will be a change, Robert. I mean, you talk about the 20 that are alive still getting out, and we've got these joyous scenes there. But when that turns to coffins being produced, maybe
there will be mood swings, and we have to expect it. I'm absolutely fascinated as to, he's very good at car conversations, what Trump is actually saying to Netanyahu. I don't know whether President Herzog, who is a very reasonable man, a man of no power but influence, whether he's in on it. I think that he will be reinforcing a message, and Trump's message has been very simple today. This isn't time for celebration. The war is over. And that's what he is saying to Netanyahu. Don't think you can go piling in immediately that this is happening, which is a prospect, you know, because what are you going to do? And that leaves the big question. Hamas, the future of Gaza, how you can stabilize it. And this is where I disagree with Mr. Huckabee and whatever Rubio has been saying. Remember, they are Republican politicians and they have got an eye on the presidency after all this. I think the Brits, I'm quite surprised that the French haven't been involved, but France has got an awful lot on its mind at the moment. But like Turkey, I'm afraid, yes, they are imperial powers. We have a legacy, we have a strong history, we have a strong tradition, both in Israel, Jordan, places like that. And I think the key to where Britain may be turning the key a bit is helping out with Qatar, with whom we have very, very close relations, and possibly the UAE. I'm not going to go right round it. It's security and money, security and money. And Witkoff said that about Powell. We do have to stop to think, because it's Witkoff, it seems to me, and Jared Kushner, who appeared just late in the day, extremely experienced, very bright man, and they seem to have been working with somebody they knew very well, Jonathan Powell.
It's interesting you talk about the car conversation between President Donald Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, because they're in the presidential limousine now, heading to Jerusalem, but completely at odds with each other last night, because Benjamin Netanyahu was talking, saying the military campaign is not over, whereas Trump was definitive, wasn't he, speaking on Air Force One last night, saying the war is over.
And I think that's the message he's giving to them now. It would be very interesting what the military advisors are saying, and the successors to Netanyahu, like the foreign minister, the defense minister, are also saying with their American counterparts. I think this is a very important meeting. It's not just ceremony. And by the way, whatever we say about Starmer and the others, I think they were invited to go to this meeting. It's not a gate-crashing exercise.
Yeah, they were told on Friday, weren't they? And they've convened today. I mean, that is a testament to President Trump's convening power, isn't he? They've managed to get 20 world leaders together in 72 hours or so.
And he wanted a principal NATO ally there.
They won't be one of the signatories of this peace deal, will they? So it'll be Egypt, Qatar, the US and Turkey signing this peace deal.
Turkey, very interesting.
Very interesting.
Big army, big influence. Gaza was once under the Ottoman Empire.
It was once what?
Under the Ottoman Empire.
Really, yeah.
Just over a century ago.
Gosh.
Think of that. And there's all these residents. Britain was there, was an unfortunate midwife to the birth of the, I mean, in the way that it was done to the state of Israel. These things don't go away, and I think it's very important. And Egypt, another one. Egypt is in agony because it is has been Gaza always, almost, since Israel became a state, has been a major security headache. They've actually been in charge there for a period. And the problem that they have is the spillover of violence and terrorism with terrible crime wars in the Sinai Desert. That's why they've been very, very careful. I believe President Sisi's son, a general, has been in charge of the security on the border at some time. And it's been a real tough one for them. And they'll be very reluctant about policing Gaza itself. And that's one of the big questions now, how they make up this stabilization force. And Egypt and Turkey again will have a big voice in how it's done.
So we know that 7 hostages have been released so far by Hamas. We've got news in the past few minutes that the Red Cross reportedly received a second group of hostages. We're awaiting details on just how many there are with the Red Cross right now. Also getting some comments from President Trump that he gave just before he got off of Air Force One in Israel, saying he would like to visit Gaza. He said it was something I'd be proud to do. I'd like to do it. I'd like to put my feet in the Gaza Strip at least. I think it will be a great miracle over the coming decades.
Yeah, I think that's it. We are running for the Peace Prize, too. It's where the theatrical side of Trump really comes out very, very strong. He's been pushing the big mode, getting the momentum behind him. And as I was saying earlier on, he saw the opportunity when he called Netanyahu to order, frankly, for the raid on the Hamas headquarters in Qatar on the 9th of September and saying, look, you've got to talk to somebody. And this is part of the debate, by the way, about the most prominent of the Palestinian prisoners, Marwan Barghouti, because you've got to find somebody to talk to.
Say the Qatar headquarters had have been, well, it was blown up, but, you know, say there had have been the fatalities that the Israelis wanted within that, which there wasn't. A diplomatic row seems to have been avoided as a result of that, and that could have gone the other way as well. But if they had have received the deaths of the Hamas officials in there, what could the consequences have been?
I think the ploy that Israel pulled with Hezbollah, cutting off the head and killing people like Hania, the head of Hamas in Tehran, as you may remember, they would say business as usual, but it's where I see a divergence in the modus operandi of America and Israel. You cannot go on saying that you will bash them into the ground, because I will defeat, I will destroy, I will eradicate Hamas, which was Netanyahu's seeming aim, has not worked. They can cover out 7,000 fighters, they're still running some sort of authority, and are much, much disliked by the majority of Gazans, as we have noticed. Probably that would not have been the way to deal with Hamas. And let's see what really did happen. And Trump and Witkoff and Rubio, Rubio I think is behind in this. It's really the key team, Trump, Witkoff and his son-in-law, really knew what to do. Right away after that. But it has to be said, talking of Jonathan Powell, Rubio is also their Jonathan Powell. Yeah. He's taken on the job of National Security Advisor. A very, very, very important role. The other thing is where Jonathan Powell comes into it, of course, talking of China, and where Britain is important in this as well, which we are forgetting in downplaying, and I disagree with your 2 Tory spokesmen on this. We are important because of intelligence sharing. It's a unique, okay, we're part of this thing called Five Eyes. The bit that really counts is the cousins, as John le Carré used to call it. It's UK, US, Cheltenham, GCHQ. And the different perspectives on China really could affect that relationship, and that's where that's important.
You're fascinating to talk to.
I leap all over the place. I'm sorry.
No. It's fascinating because it's never really highlighted that Britain is one of the top players, really in the intelligence world.
Yep. And that's why we're there with Ukraine. We haven't got actually a lot of the advice in the council has been so important, and it's very interesting that Trump on Air Force One said, you know, that I haven't given up on Ukraine.
So he'll deal with that when he gets home.
And we will be very, very busy. And I hope Sakir, he obviously does know this, we've got to get a new ambassador into Washington pretty quickly, because it's a very, very important relationship, that one. It's funny, despite everything, they still trust the Brits. It's a good relationship, as we saw with the state visit.
Yeah, well, fascinating, Robert. Really enjoyed listening to you and your whole perspective and analysis on things. Thank you very much indeed for your contributions this morning. Thank you. Now, if you've got something to say and about what you're witnessing today, what we're experiencing, the consequences for all of us, really, and Britain's role in all of this, and should there be a British role. We have donated another £30 million today. That gives a total of £100 million donated to the situation in Gaza towards rebuilding. Let us know what you think. Is that money well spent? Should that money be spent? Get in touch, have your say, and those views will be reflected throughout the programme this morning. The time is 27 minutes, just creeping up to 27 minutes past 8 o'clock on this Monday morning. Thank you for watching GB Breakfast. We're with you until 9:30 this morning on your television, on your radio, on your smart speaker.
And our lead story this morning is those first hostages have been handed over to Israel from Hamas, 7 in total. We've also received news in the past few minutes that the Red Cross inside Gaza have now received a second group of hostages.
I was just saying, Dawn, I think that Don Neeson and Norman Baker have joined us here in the studio. I was just saying, Dawn, although we see a celebratory mood here, that is bound to change. It cannot. You couldn't be human and, receive a number of coffins, a number of bodies in it over, I don't know if it'll happen today, if it's going to happen before 10 o'clock, as per the deadline given, or whenever it happens. But you won't get people clapping and applauding and smiling the way they are there, surely.
Norman and I were just discussing this in the green room just now, and it's impossible to imagine what the emotion is like in that spot. Very high emotion, but you have got people there who are celebrating their loved ones, the hostages coming home. But you've also got people there, friends and family, who know that their loved ones will never really come home. You've got the coffin coming home, you've got their remains, and you're going to bury them, and you'll be able to hopefully, let them rest in peace. But the emotions of standing next to someone who is about to see their husband, their brother, their son come home, and knowing that yours isn't, I just can't get my head on. You're looking at those faces now live on our screens, and it's like, and there's one girl, I just said to you, Norman, didn't I? There was one girl there in tears.
Yes.
And it's like, and I felt quite intrusive watching her, because I don't know her story, I don't know who she is, but the combination of the joy and the celebration that for today at least no more death is happening, and you are being reunited with your loved ones, but there is the thinking about what they have gone through for 2 years and where we are going forward with this.
Yes, where we're going forward is actually, I think our minds turning to that, because this could be a moment to build on, whereby you seek to achieve the kind of peace which had not been there for so long. Or it could be a transitory moment of some sort of celebration or happiness or commemoration, depending where you're coming from, and it could unravel. And it's quite important what happens next in terms of the Board of Peace, whatever it's being called, and what they're able to do, and how much international influence can be exerted.
Yeah.
Because the Israeli government, many of them have said, they're going to, it's not finished yet, they want to destroy the Hamas tunnels and so on. I mean, if they start doing that, then Hamas will respond, and we're back to where we were.
Well, what we're seeing there, Norman, is the Red Cross convoy, which will receive the next batch of prisoners, and we will follow that as far as we can. But as Ellie was saying, cameras being kept off a lot of what is going on here out of respect to dignity and to stop one side or the other claiming too much propaganda from all of this.
Well, that's exactly right, and I think last time there was propaganda exerted from the release of hostages before, and I think we have got to treat this with dignity and keep people out. I mean, apart from anything else, the people who are coming back may well be in a terrible state.
Yes. Yeah.
Though they may be physically in a terrible state, they certainly will be not in a mood to somehow be propelled into a vast horde of people.
I mean, it's not as if you sort of have 2 years as a prisoner, then you come out and you say, "Oh, it's all okay, go back to my family now." No. There is. Robert Fox was talking earlier that post-traumatic stress disorder was only really diagnosed after the Falklands War and the traumas people went through then.
Yeah, that's exactly right. When you think about people like Terry Waite, for example, when he came back, when people have been imprisoned under very difficult circumstances, perhaps thinking, either I'm going to die from starvation or I'm going to be killed by the people holding me. That's a terribly difficult psychological position to be in. And then to come back to an equally difficult psychological position to be thrust among thousands of people, that's not sensible. So dealing with this in a way when the Red Cross take them to a hospital or wherever they're going to take them to to be
you just wouldn't know where to begin. You know, you bring somebody back and you say, hello, how are you? Do you want a cup of tea and a biscuit? Do you want to watch Coronation Street, or what do you want to do? You know, seriously, how do you actually integrate into normal life?
And as I said earlier on, I was lucky enough to interview the cousin of one of the hostages that sadly isn't coming back alive, Tal Haimi. His name was 41. He was murdered at the kibbutz, defending his family. He had 9-year-old twins, a toddler, and his wife was pregnant with their 4th child, just pregnant with their 4th child. And so they knew from day one that he wasn't going to come back. They took his body into Gaza. So they knew he wasn't going to come back, and I said, what are you going to do as a family now when you know, he comes back? They say they're going to go back to the kibbutz, they're going to bury him in the kibbutz, and so the children can pay tribute to their father and remember their father, because the 2 youngest ones have no recollection of Dad. So they're going to go there, but they are going to teach their children what happened, why it happened, and more importantly, why it should never happen again. And that is the important message to give the younger generation. And Tel Haimi's children certainly will be brought up with that message. They are looking at this as a lesson to be learned for peace. Whether everybody else will be able to do that is another matter. And in particular, I think Hamas, who, you know, the plan required that they give up any role in running Gaza and disarm. I just don't know how anyone. I mean, how do you disarm Hamas?
Yeah,
I mean,
ideology.
Yeah, how do you destroy an ideology? Many children in Gaza are being taught that Jewish children living a few miles away across the border are the enemy.
Well, Dawn, Norman, do stay with us. We're going to cross live to Israel now and speak to the journalist and author Yotam Confino. Good morning to you, Yotam, and tell us what the mood is like on the ground there in Israel, with news that Hamas has released, well, we know 7 are safe inside Israel now, and Red Cross is receiving a second group of hostages as we speak.
So the celebration and the expectations are twofold. First of all, the most important thing today is the release of the hostages. They are coming out. The families are being reunited with them, and we're waiting for the last of them to get out, including those who have been killed, so the bodies of hostages. And here where I am in the Knesset, in Israel's parliament, it is obviously a place with, first of all, a lot of expectation and a great atmosphere, because President Trump is about to arrive very soon. He's making his way from Ben Gurion Airport to the Knesset as we speak, and he's due to give a speech inside the Knesset, which is quite historic. It's not every day that an American president comes and gives a speech. So as he will be speaking, there will be images of more hostages coming out at the same time. An incredible day, really, for Israelis and, of course, also for Palestinians, because as Trump said, the war is over. He has declared the war is over. Now, of course, there are a lot of other questions, as I heard you discussing inside the studio, about the disarmament of Hamas. But as for now, everyone is taking things day by day, so to say. They're taking today as a celebration of hostages coming out, and of for some of the Palestinians, some of their loved ones who've been held up in prison. Obviously, you know, there's a difference between someone who's in jail for committing murder and someone who's held hostage. But nevertheless, you will be seeing celebrations in the Palestinian territories today as well.
That word celebration, Yotam, when those coffins start appearing, when the dead bodies start coming through, surely the mood amongst the crowds, the people waiting, who would have been cheering, surely that changes.
Absolutely. But this is such a bittersweet feeling and a bittersweet day, because we get 20 hostages out alive that just a few days ago, Israelis had no idea if this was ever going to happen. Some people had actually just reconciled with the fact that they might just end their lives in Gaza. So when you see images from Hostage Square right now, they're focusing on the positive. They're focusing on life coming out. But as you mentioned correctly, the minute you start seeing the coffins coming out, and in the coming days when you start seeing the first funerals, the mood will change, because these people, these families have had an open wound for 2 years. They've not been able to get the bodies of their loved ones back. It is simply unbearable for them, but at least they get closure, and this is what they've been wanting for such a long time.
How
Been wanting this for such a long time, and we saw that hero's welcome, you might describe it as, that red carpet welcome for President Trump in Ben Gurion Airport a few moments ago. Do the Israelis credit President Trump with finally getting these hostages home?
They do. Every single Israeli I speak to, they credit Donald Trump over Netanyahu. Of course, if you speak to Netanyahu's ministers, which I did just earlier today, I spoke to 2 different ministers, and of course they want to credit Netanyahu. But I think that the truth it lies somewhere in the middle. As Steve Witkoff rightfully said a few days ago, when people started booing when he mentioned Netanyahu's name at Hostage Square, he said, listen, guys, he also played a part in this. It couldn't have been done without Netanyahu. It is Trump's work. It is him forcing through this deal. But of course, if Netanyahu had continued to refuse for whatever reason, there wouldn't be a deal. So he also needs to get credit, at least for making this deal this time around.
How do you see Netanyahu's future?
It's a really good question, because Netanyahu is an exceptional and a unique politician in Israeli history. I would say even in modern history, he is reigning longer than most democratically elected leaders in the world. And every time his career seems to be over, everyone says, well, he surely can't survive this. He somehow manages to stage a comeback, and I'm not so sure that his career is done. You know, he's bringing the hostages back, whether you like him or not. He's ending the war, and to a certain extent, it's also at least the idea that Hamas won't play a role in Gaza anymore. And he's also managed to single-handedly, along with obviously help from Donald Trump, but to destroy Israel's enemies in other countries, such as Hezbollah in Lebanon. Bashar al-Assad is gone due to certain domino effects of what Israel did. So he will be able to campaign on a lot of these military successes. So I don't think his career is over yet.
Tom, as part of this peace plan, there are going to be 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees released back to Gaza. What hope do you have that this peace plan will hold when among those prisoners and detainees will be people who want to see the destruction of Israel?
Well, we shouldn't expect the 250 people who are being released that serve life in prison for the murder of Israelis. We shouldn't expect them to turn into peaceniks overnight. They won't. The question is here if the international community can together lift this task to disarm Hamas, because Israel has done all of the dirty work, quite literally. They have obliterated Hamas in every corner of Gaza. For huge costs for the Palestinians in Gaza, for Israel, and for Israel's reputation abroad. Now it's up to the international community to come together, this task force, this international stabilization force, to go in there and disarm. But it will only happen if they send troops on the ground. They cannot try from the outside of the Gaza border to disarm Hamas. That's not going to happen. They need to have boots on the ground, whether Palestinians or Arab nations. They need to be there and to patrol the cities of Gaza. Otherwise, Hamas will just go mental, as they have in the past couple of days.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Yotam Confino. Yotam is a journalist and an author. We're now joined by former chairman of the Defence Select Committee, and that is Tobias Ellwood. Tobias, good morning to you. What do you make, Tobias, of what you're seeing so far?
A big day in geopolitics, there's no doubt about it. Dramatic and historic events are unfolding right in front of us. It's difficult to imagine the hostages now being released after that 2-year horrific ordeal, being kept probably in some dark tunnel somewhere, hugely claustrophobic. And so there is a cause of celebration and perhaps also a cautious optimism as to what happens next. Leaders are now gathering in Egypt to sign a peace deal. But my humble charge to President Trump is, yes, this is largely down to yourself and your team. It's an incredible effort. You've done what other presidents have failed to achieve. But the hard work actually starts now. You cannot walk away from this deal. You must remain committed. Hamas is already starting to put their militia back in uniforms. They've hesitated on handing over their weapons. And you've just spoken about ideology. It is the ideology that needs to be crushed, that ordinary Palestinians believe that they have a future that is not led by terrorism. And all the pieces are in place. You've got Israel being pressured, finally coming to the table. You've got the Arab community wanting to help rebuild, pressurizing the terrorist group itself to say it's now over. So the hard work does start now once that peace deal has been signed in Sharm el-Sheikh.
It's a great deal of hard work, isn't it, Tobias? Because, I mean, you mentioned they're destroying an ideology. How can you? Is it possible to destroy an ideology? And then we're just hearing there from Yotam Confino, the international community needs to disarm Hamas.
Yes, and that is the critical question. Sadly, yesterday was the anniversary of the Bali bombing, where I lost my brother, and it's a question I pose all the time. How do you then convince people that they're not going to get a fast track to paradise? They're not going to be rewarded by killing Westerners on some crusade, which they've been indoctrinated to believe in. And that requires effort. It requires ordinary Muslims as well to participate in this and say, this is not what Islam is all about. And that's a difficult task indeed. It does require the support of the Abrahamic communities, the signatories. That it was actually Donald Trump that brought to the table. So there can be a plan to move this forward, but it must be absolutely energized by all those around. I'm concerned that once those hostages have been released, that the pressure will be taken off Israel, particularly Prime Minister Netanyahu, and we could end up seeing through perhaps an accident or escalation, the entire peace plan then unfold. And that would be so sad, because in all the decades that I've been looking at this and being involved in this, I've never seen a better opportunity for peace in the Middle East.
What's your assessment of Britain's role in this peace deal? Because Bridget Phillipson, talking to the media over the weekend, was described by the US ambassador to Israel for being delusional, for saying that Britain had played a key role.
I think that's unhelpful discussion to go down. I understand why you ask the question. The focus should now be on these wider geopolitical issues. I think it was unfortunate what she said, particularly if Britain hadn't played a bigger role as perhaps she alluded to suggest that Britain had. But what we can do now is through our soft power, through our initiatives in supporting the peace plan itself. Tony Blair is going to be front and center of that. The difficult work starts now, and we can then participate in that. So let's not get distracted by that. Unfortunate. I'm sure Parliament's returning today. This issue will be raised and clarity will be provided on exactly what Britain has done or what it plans to do in the future. We shouldn't forget, though, if you know your history, we were very much involved in this over decades, over the last century. Therefore, it's in our interest. I think we are beholden historically, politically, to actually lend support as much as we can.
That will be delivering aid, Tobias. I mean, Keir Starmer's tweeted in the last 45 minutes or so saying that the UK is providing additional humanitarian aid for civilians in Gaza. I mean, that in itself is going to be very difficult logistically, isn't it?
Oh, it is. I mean, when you look at those scenes, the air photography of Gaza itself, even the roads themselves need to be cleared. The scale of the reconstruction is absolutely enormous. The immediacy is to get that aid in to prevent the famine that was starting to break out. But then there's the security elements as well. I'm saddened that we're not participating in some form of security to provide that buffer, to give Israel the guarantee that they will continue to be safe. That's always been a concern from the Israelis, because this is what we do well. We are a convener. We lead when it comes to international security, and we need a coalition of the willing that is going to be committed, absolutely committed. This is going to be a couple decades project to make it work. And if we sign the document, walk away, and hope it's then going to fall together on its own, then we're deluded. We're going to be back to square one, and terrorism will then take advantage of that, and Hamas will be able to regroup. As you touched on earlier, that ideology will not disappear overnight.
Tobias Ellwood, as always, thank you so much for joining us on Breakfast and for your analysis. Well, we have just been hearing from President Trump just before he landed in Israel. He spoke upon Air Force One. Let's have a listen to what he said.
It's over. The war is over, okay? You understand that?
Well, we've got here in the studio, we've got Norman Baker and we've got Don Neeson with their opinions on that. Norman, and he says the war is over. I hope it is. I hope he's right. But it's a big statement to make.
It's a big statement to make, and I think it's unfortunately a bit of hyperbole. There's a lot further to go. This is just the first stage of a very long process, and it can all unravel. I don't want to sound negative. I hope it doesn't, obviously, but it could unravel. We've still got the Israeli government wants to get rid of the tunnels that Hamas has. We've still got Hamas rearming. This is not an easy situation. It's very volatile, and I'm reminded of George Bush, who said mission accomplished when he excuse me, went into Iraq. And it wasn't mission accomplished at all. It went on for several years afterwards. So we hope and pray, I think, for peace to be sustained, and that we hope this is the first day of a better future for the area. I have to say that the people of Israel and the people of Palestine have been let down by their leaders quite badly. I mean, you know, the individuals in those countries are innocent, and they have been, they're the ones who've suffered, while the Israeli government and the Hamas leadership have conducted this kind of war between them. Can I just refer briefly, if I may, Eamonn and Ellie, to a front page of The Guardian, because I'm bringing this back to the UK, because the story on the front page of The Guardian we've not touched on is that charities have warned of growing racial abuse, intimidation and threats of violence as a consequence of people they're supporting. These are Jewish organisations and Muslim organisations who are being targeted now because they're helping individuals in their communities. And there's been a letter now sent by Age UK and 50 other charities to the government saying this is what's happening. They're being targeted. Even charity shops are being targeted. We've seen mosques in this country and synagogues being attacked. And, you know, we need to try and make sure we don't blame individual people who have nothing to do with this.
I think that's the important point to make. I mean, those two poor souls who lost their lives in the synagogue in Manchester, they're not Netanyahu. They're ordinary Jewish men going to worship. The whole thing is conflated with the politics of it. Ordinary Jews are not Netanyahu.
But they're tangible.
Exactly. Ordinary Palestinians are not Hamas. I know, but that's where we are. And there was a shocking survey recently by the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism in the UK, and it found that 10% of young people have a favourable view of Hamas. Not even can understand why Hamas made it, but a favourable view of Hamas. And 1/5, 90% of young people, that the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7, 2023 was justified. I mean, the rape and slaughter and torture is not justified. It's never justified. It never is.
And that's what's happened in this country in the past 2 years, isn't it, Dawn? I mean, even the Education Secretary speaking at the weekend, talking about the levels of anti-Semitism at universities up and down this country.
And in our NHS, we've seen NHS doctors who have been suspended, quite rightly so, for some of the horrific anti-Semitic messaging they're putting on social media.
Indeed. And there was a mosque very close to where I lived that was attacked. Down in Peacehaven. I mean, these people are completely innocent. They're just going about their normal lives. They're not in any way connected with what's happening.
There's a lot of angry people out there, and people get views, and people watch news, and they listen to news and radio, and they hear things, and often we feel as journalists, whatever, that you can't ask a question. You're deemed to give an opinion all the time.
Yes.
News has become more opinion oriented.
I think that is a big issue. I mean, I remember when this first started 2 years ago, and I was doing a news review, and I simply read the headline out on the front page of the Times newspaper. I remember it very, very well. Of the Times newspaper, just all I did, Eamonn, was read the headline out. And the abuse I got on social media for reading the headline out, which seemed to people imply that I wanted to see all the children in Gaza murdered. I mean, all I did was read a headline out. It wasn't even just a straightforward, and that was back then. So 2 years on, the anger, understandably, it's just been a horrific 2 years, but it's just out there, and I have to say, our politicians don't help. I think some of the rhetoric we hear is appalling.
Well, this rhetoric may be humbling for many of us. This is a video we're going to play, and you can hear it on radio as well. And Avzana Care, the mother of Israeli hostage Matan, on a video call with someone holding up their phone to show her a video with Matan. She told her son, "You're coming home. War is over."
You can't even imagine, Dawn, how those mothers, those families are feeling today. Many of them waiting on an airbase now in southern Israel, waiting for their loved ones to come home after 2 long years.
Well, I mean, you know, thankfully we are, hopefully, please God, we'll never be in that situation. But just think about it at home. Someone you love your most, you know, your husband, your wife, your son, your daughter. It doesn't matter. And imagine them being taken away from you for 2 years. Held, tortured, possibly never seeing daylight, and then coming home. I mean, I just cannot. The emotions are incredible, and how you get over what they've been through and how you help them and support them. It
will be a long road ahead, won't it? And it will start with an initial medical assessment on that facility, that military base in southern Israel. They'll then be transferred to hospitals, and from there, I can imagine there will be years of therapy and very deep conversations with their family, their friends, their loved ones. And Norman, I was struck this morning looking at the details of the 7 hostages that we know have been released so far. They are in Israel now safely, thank goodness. How young they are. They're all men. They're all young, many in their 20s, many at the Supernova Festival that were taken on the 7th of October. I mean, these are young men who've now got to deal with this the rest of their lives.
They have got to deal with the rest of their lives, but the good news is they're able to deal with it the rest of their lives because they've now been freed, and there's nothing worse than seeing a young person, no matter who they are, whether they're Jewish or whether they're Muslim or anything else, having their lives curtailed or otherwise damaged. I mean, there's a whole lot of children in Gaza who've now lost limbs as a consequence of all this, and they'll live with that for the rest of their lives. And, you know, it's tragic when you see young people affected in that way.
It's the innocents who suffer. I mean, there was a horrific story last week of a young man who'd been at the Nova Festival. Let's not forget that was a dance festival in aid of peace, by the way. And he was there with his girlfriend. They were both in their late teens. And she was murdered in front of his eyes. He laid there and she was killed by Hamas. And he took his own life last week because he just could not live with what had happened. So these are consequences that are going to go on and on and on, and I think, you know, everybody now needs to make a concerted effort. As I keep saying, and it sounds like all peace and love, but it never happens again. But when you've got two sides who, under Netanyahu and certainly under Hamas, who have vowed to destroy one another.
Yeah, it's terrible. And actually, you can get peace out of this. I'm thinking about, for example, what happened at the end of the South African apartheid regime, when Nelson Mandela could have been so willing to take revenge. They didn't, and that made a change in South Africa. So you can achieve these things.
But you need a leader like that.
You do.
I wonder what way Trump will be received at the Knesset, which is he's on his way there to the Israeli Parliament to speak today. I wonder, is there any dissent towards him? I mean, if people are against Netanyahu and what Netanyahu stands for, surely they couldn't be in favour of Trump.
I think there'll be a welcome for Trump, because how could there not be a welcome for Trump? I mean, he has got the deal done and he has got hostages back. I think those who are on the extreme far right, the religious zealot party, if you like, in the Israeli government, will be keeping themselves quiet rather than anything else.
Yeah, hopefully they will, but I mean, these are politicians. I mean, bringing it back to the UK, some of the rhetoric we've seen from our politicians, even, you know, over the Palestine marches on Saturday, we had Sadiq Khan, you know, from the river to the sea, which literally to every Jewish person is offensive and is upsetting, saying, well, it depends in the context in which you use that phrase. To most Jewish people, there is no context in which you use that phrase.
It is offensive to some people.
State of Israel.
It's just offensive to some people, and therefore you just avoid that phrase.
Exactly, that's the thing, if you're a right-minded person. But we have people on our streets waving those banners, and I think for our mayor to say, well, it depends on the context, is, you know, just say anything, Sadiq Khan, I'm sorry.
He can make the point, actually, he wants to make without using that particular phrase.
Yeah, no, exactly, yeah.
Do you think we will see an end to these pro-Palestine marches now, Dawn?
I was just looking at the tweet that Jeremy Corbyn put out on Saturday, and he said, a ceasefire is respite, it is not justice. We're a global movement for Palestine and we are never going away. So by the sounds of that, no.
I think it depends what happens next. If we end up with peace evolving, then they will fade away. If, however, we see the Israeli government going and the IDF going in to destroy the Hamas tunnels and confronting the Palestinian population, then they will continue.
Well, this is what we hope, that the international, what are they going to be called, the International Stabilisation Force, which consists of mainly Arab countries, will do the job.
I think it's very wise for Arab countries, as a matter of fact. They've not played a very vocal role. They've been behind the scenes, but they haven't been up in front. And I think it would give the Palestinian population some comfort if there were Arab countries involved.
What do you make of Britain's role in all of this, Dawn? I mean, we've been speaking about this morning. We've had Steve Witkoff acknowledging in a post on X the vital role of the United Kingdom in assisting and coordinating efforts that have led to this historic day in Israel, and going so far as to name-check Jonathan Powell for his incredible input. What did you make of that?
Well, the Jonathan Powell name check is an interesting one, isn't it? I'm sure there are. We were talking again in the green one, weren't we, Norman? Green, ironically, being the colour we're wearing today. About the wheels within wheels going on behind the scenes here, with links into the whole China situation and everything. But how much input has the UK and Sir Keir Starmer had? If you talk to the Jewish community here and certainly to politicians in Israel, they would say none. Yesterday, Sharon Haskell, Israel's Deputy Foreign Minister, said Britain's decision had prolonged the war and emboldened Hamas because we declared that we would recognise Palestine as a state. I know we weren't the only country. I know that. But, I mean, how much as Keir Starmer had to do with it? I mean, I would say that I think he's
Jonathan
having
Powell's better qualified than Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
Well,
he's
yes.
not elected, but he's better qualified.
Yeah. He's been there a long time. There's a way around the block, as it were. I think it's not the most important issue by any means today, but it's interesting how you've got really quite divergent views from the US administration. On the one hand, you've got Mike Huckabee saying it's delusional that Britain is claiming credit. On the other hand, you've got Steve Witkoff, who was Trump's envoy, saying exactly the opposite. And there's some interesting developments inside the US about that.
Well, trying to protect Jonathan Powell.
Perhaps that's what it is. Perhaps that's what it is.
Robert Fox was in earlier talking about how the intelligence network, how America relies on Israel to be its eyes and ears in the Middle East and informative a lot of things that are going on. But Britain plays a very big role in all of this, and at Cheltenham, GCHQ and whatever. And it's not often talked about, but he said Britain is a really big player in that intelligence community.
The GCHQ element of Britain's ability is actually valued by the United States quite heavily, and in some ways, we're actually more qualified than the US when it comes to that sort of listening and surveillance process, which GCHQ gets involved in. I've been to GCHQ a couple of times when I was a minister. It's a very impressive organisation down there, down in Cheltenham. So we have got an asset there, which is important to us in terms of international influence. It's also worth noting that at the same time as the government was taking a pretty pro-Palestine view on matters, they were also continuing to have RAF flights in large numbers going over Gaza and feeding information back to the Israeli government.
And when we look and we've talked there about rebuilding and we talk about peace and Trump is saying the war is over, my goodness me though, imagine having to rebuild that area, what goes on there, the devastation, the memories that people will have, the bitterness that people are bound to take away with them. You just can't suddenly say, it's over.
No, the bitterness will last a long time, and there'll be people who will hate Israel even more as a consequence of what's happened. And there were people who hate Hamas even more because of what's happened. So that has to be undone somehow. It's not an easy process to do. In terms of the physical reality, I mean, Gaza's a pile of rubble. I mean, people going back there and finding nothing there.
I mean, even rebuilding is going to take decades.
It is going to take decades. And, you know, part of what Britain, I think, or the government said it wants to do is to help physically rebuild Gaza. Someone has to, because there's nothing there.
Well, initially we've pledged 20 million aid to Gaza following this, but the actual rebuilding, as you say, it will take decades and cost billions, and it needs to be an international effort as well. There's already some discussion in the Arab media about it being run by Westerners.
Well, look, as the time approaches 9 o'clock, we thank you for your company this morning. And we're going to go live to Israel. And we will speak to journalist and author Jotam Confino again.
We're speaking to Ashley Waxham, who's in Israel for us now. Ashley, describe for us, if you will, the mood in Israel as we hear that 7 hostages so far have been released and we're waiting on the second transfer in the next few moments.
So I can confirm, first of all, that all live hostages have been transferred to the Red Cross. So they're all out of Hamas's hands. And the atmosphere in Israel is Incredible. It's, we are a nation that knows to celebrate and to mourn simultaneously. Our country has been built on this. Our Memorial Day happens the day before our Independence Day. So we know what it's like to celebrate and to mourn simultaneously. We know that today is going to be a difficult day, but as of now, we are celebrating the images of seeing our loved ones come home. I do want to preempt something that will be, all over the media, probably in the next few hours and in the next few days. We are seeing already how the families of the hostages that were not yet released in the first 7 were receiving video calls from Hamas. So one of the mothers shared that she received a missed call on her phone, and it said from the Al-Aqsa Brigades. She phoned it back, and a Hamas terrorist answered the phone. And they allowed them to speak, face or screen to screen with their children, with their loved ones who are still in Hamas's hands. So first of all, begs the question, they had 2 years. They could have, contacted the families and let them know that their loved ones were alive. But secondly, what we do know from that is because under this agreement, Hamas was not allowed to parade them and, do the ceremonies that we saw the last time. What they're doing now is they're filming it from their end. They're going to edit it and create propaganda videos showing how well, treated the hostages were, and they allowed them to phone home, and that they're well fed. And they even, we even heard in one of the videos that was released here in Israel, one of the parents saying to a Hamas terrorist, this is incredible, over a FaceTime call, we'll say whatever you want, just let us see our child. So we know that the world needs to prepare for this propaganda that will be coming out very shortly.
I was just about to ask you, Ashley, with those reports of these FaceTime calls from Hamas, is that in keeping with the agreement that there would be no videos, there would be no displays by Hamas, no propaganda, no handover ceremonies? It looks as though they're doing their own thing anyway.
Of course, the way it works with terrorist organizations is they find their sneaky way to get around through the fine print. So maybe they didn't write that there will be ceremonies, so they're doing it through videos. We don't expect, our expectations of Hamas are very low at this point. But you know what? It's something that we, again, as a nation that celebrates life, that just wants to see our people home, we're willing, to pay that price. Just let our people go, videos, whatever. Anyone in the West that looks at these propaganda videos and believes them and, goes to the streets then and talks about Hamas as such a humanitarian organization, I mean, that says a lot about the West.
We're seeing live pictures now of the Knesset in Jerusalem, where Donald Trump will be arriving shortly. He's just travelled there with Benjamin Netanyahu. What do the Israeli people make of President Trump? Do they credit him with getting the hostages back rather than they would Benjamin Netanyahu?
So, I don't think it's even arguable the amount of love that the Israeli people have shown for Trump pretty much since his election. And if Trump was running for office in Israel, he would win probably with a landslide. I mean, there is a lot of credit to be played here for so many sides. First of all, Benjamin Netanyahu, we have a rift in our public opinion about him and his politics since before October 7th, which is, that's the way it looks in a democracy, and that's fair. There are many people who are crediting Netanyahu, at least 50%, crediting Netanyahu with his with being really adamant. It's difficult to stand up to a U.S. president, to international pressure. I heard you guys speaking before about the recognition of a Palestinian state. It's not easy for an Israeli prime minister to stand up to that international pressure, and Benjamin Netanyahu certainly was able to do that. We in Israel place an immense credit on our Israeli soldiers, our close to 1,000 soldiers that we've lost since October 7th. We know that what brought to fruition this deal now was many things at play. It was the Israeli attack on the Hamas leadership in Qatar. It was the immense military pressure. It was going into Gaza City. All of these things played a role. And of course, President Trump, being the amazing negotiator that he is, knew how to take all these different pieces of the puzzle and put them together in the right way that I don't think we would have seen any other world leader know how to do, including Netanyahu, because he doesn't have the ability to go to Turkey and say to Erdogan, you know, you need to pressure Hamas. And
Ashley, we've got to leave it there. We're just getting pictures live coming in from the Knesset. But thank you very much indeed for your take and your analysis on things. Please, if you're listening or watching at home, have your say as well, and we will reflect that. But these are live pictures. The Prime Minister lining up there, ready to introduce the US President Donald Trump to the Israeli Parliament, the Knesset.
Yeah, and he'll be speaking there very shortly before meeting with hostage families. We're joined in the studio now by our Home Security Editor, Mark White, and we've got some breaking news, haven't we, Mark?
Yeah, some significant breaking news. Obviously, we had that first group of 7 hostages released around 7 a.m. this morning. Now we're told that the remaining 13 hostages who are still alive have been released by Hamas, are in the process of being taken to Israel by the Red Cross. So very positive news to report there, because as always, when you have a process of staggered release, there's always a potential for something to go wrong. Those relatives who know that the first 7 have been released are desperately waiting for news on their loved ones will now reports coming from Israel that the remaining 13 hostages who are still alive have now been released by Hamas, handed to the Red Cross.
As soon as we start seeing dead bodies and the dead start arriving, I think there'll be a mood change.
Well, you say that. I'm not so sure. They have known for some considerable time that the remaining 28 hostages are dead. It's extremely important for those loved ones to repatriate the remains of their loved ones so that they can afford them a proper burial and begin their grieving process. So yes, of course, there'll be profound sadness. There has been profound sadness for an awful long time in Israel, as many of these hostage families have known about the fate of their loved ones. I think it will be a sense, certainly coupled with that sadness, of great relief that finally they'll be able to get the remains of their loved ones back and they'll know where they are. They'll be able to lay them to rest over 738 days since they were first taken. But of course, there will be tremendous joy at the fact that at least the 20 who are still alive are now, some already in Israel, the others, as we speak, transiting through Gaza towards Israel in the care of the Red Cross initially. They'll be handed over to the Israelis, flown out of that area by helicopters to medical assistants who'll be waiting to check these people over, because, as I say, 738 days in captivity in some of the most horrific of circumstances that they've had to undergo, because we've heard from other hostages that have been released about the way in which they were treated.
Trump making his way in from the car park there at the Knesset, and I've never seen the outside of the Knesset, but goodness me, it looks like a bunker from that angle there, being greeted by various Israeli and US officials there to the Parliament, where he will address them. And he's being, I don't know who that man is who's greeting him, but you can see the Prime Minister in the blue tie beside him.
Yeah, and it just looked warm between Benjamin Netanyahu and President Trump. Speaking at odds last night, Benjamin Netanyahu saying that the military operation is not over. They're talking about destroying Hamas tunnels. President Trump declaring on Air Force One that war is over. But despite all of that and being at odds with each other, it seems, big smiles and handshakes between the pair today. Mark, can you explain to people, if you will, why we're not seeing videos, as we've seen before, of the hostage releases? Because an agreement has been made, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think a decision was taken this time just to do it, to get it done without all the kind of fanfare that we've had in previous times that I think many in Israel had felt offered Hamas a degree of a propaganda victory as they staggered it out. Now they just want to get it done. which is being done today in one day, which is good. I say in one day. It's possible that some of the remains of those hostages who've died might not be repatriated today just because of the circumstances in which they may have died. They could have been, we know some of them, in the tunnel systems, buried under tons of rubble if, you know, there was a strike on that particular tunnel system. So we're told that for some, at least, of those who died, the repatriation of those remains might not be that straightforward. But listen, as you see Donald Trump sitting down there, signing the book there at the Knesset, you know, such goodwill towards the President of the United States from people in Israel. He is seen, whatever his critics, and there are many Trump haters out there, he's seen definitely by Israelis as being the man who absolutely pushed through this deal and got the return of those hostages after more than 2 years in captivity.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can read what he's just put there.
Buses, which we were showing, the Red Cross buses carrying released Palestinian detainees, have exited the prison in southern Israel. So they've shown that on live TV in Israel.
Yeah, and that makes sense, doesn't it? Because Israel had said previously that they would only start to release those prisoners once all 20 hostages were safe out of Hamas hands. So that confirmation from Mark, that breaking news in the past few moments that all 20 hostages have been handed over from Hamas to Israel.
And 13 of them still en route out of Gaza, but at least that process is now underway. They are in the custody and control of the Red Cross, heading over to Israel at the moment. So,
and just remind us where they'll be going, Mark.
Yeah, so what is happening at the moment is that they are going to the Israeli medical facilities that are awaiting them to check them over, because, as I say, 738 days in captivity in some of the most difficult of circumstances, there will be acute medical needs that these freed hostages will require, as we see President Donald Trump there walking further into the Parliament building. You were saying, Eamonn, that it is a fortress there, and it absolutely is, because, you know, the Israelis take their security very seriously indeed, and we will be hearing from Donald Trump, who will be addressing the Knesset to, I'm sure, lots of standing ovations from a very grateful nation.
Yeah, they certainly are very grateful. A moment of national unity in Israel, and we have just had that confirmation that all 20 hostages have been released to Israel. Well, let's speak now to Yossi Berlin, who is the initiator of the Oslo Agreement. Yossi, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Yes, good morning to you. Tell us about the mood in Israel and how the people of Israel are feeling at this news that all 20 hostages are out of Hamas hands.
Well, we knew in the past that once there is such a day, it will be very joyful, but we did not understand the dimensions. I mean, you have to be here in order to understand what is really happening. I mean, the whole nation is going out of their homes, and people are going to the square and are crying and are laughing, and they don't know what to do with themselves. It is really something which only a collective feeling can be defined. I mean, people, it's not enough to be happy at your home. Only in a feeling of a collective, you can feel something like this, which is very, very real.
And who do the Israeli people credit, Yossi, with getting the hostages home? Is it Benjamin Netanyahu or is it President Trump?
No question. There's no question about it. They know who is behind it. He is referring to it time and again, and they understand that it is Trump.
What does this mean then for the future of Benjamin Netanyahu? Where does it go from here politically?
He knows that in the elections he will not be re-elected. This is why he defers the idea. He defers the elections, and the elections may be on time, which is the 27th of October next year. So he looks at the polls, and he knows that for the last 2 years or so, he never got a majority for his own coalition.
What do you make of the American president addressing the Knesset today? How historic is this?
It depends on what he's going to say, of course. If it is just a gesture, it is very important, and he understands how popular he is. I mean, including by somebody like myself who would never support him, but still I'm very thankful, and I appreciate so much what he's doing. So I can imagine that those who support him are really very, very joyful today, and he's coming to perhaps to the country which supports him and loves him more than any other country in the world.
Do you believe any peace agreement from here on in will last?
If you are speaking about a peace treaty between us and the Palestinians, between us and the PLO, I believe that it lasts. It will last, and it will be sustainable. If we are speaking about the next steps, I hope that this will be the case, but it is fragile, and we know that that the agreement between Trump and Netanyahu refers to the end of the way, but it is clear. It is still vague about the next steps. We know more or less what are the milestones, but when and how. We are speaking about the military or security force which will replace Hamas. We are speaking about an interim council and other things like that, but they are still just names. So first of all, I hope that today in the Sharm el-Sheikh, the important meeting of the leaders will bear fruits, and that it will be at the end of the day, we will know in a much clearer way what is ahead of us.
Yossi, thank you. Yossi's a former Justice Minister. We thank you for your time this morning. We've got to leave it there because we're crossing to Middle East Minister Hamish Faulkner, who joins us next.
Good morning to you, Mr. Faulkner.
Good morning, Eamonn.
Good morning. What's your reaction to this news this morning that we know now that all 20 Israeli hostages have been transferred from Hamas to the Red Cross?
This is a historic and joyful day. Some of those hostages have close links to the UK. I think in particular of the hostage families I've met over the period I've been the minister. I think of Avi Natan Or, who has a British mother. I've met his siblings. I can hardly imagine the joy and the relief that they feel today. It is a day of great joy and great importance.
Could you outline for us Britain's role in all of this, just for people who are watching and listening and sort of really doesn't see how this affects us, but our Prime Minister is there in Egypt, ready to be involved in any peace deal there. And we've donated a lot of money, I think it's about £100 million so far towards the status and rebuilding of Gaza.
Thanks, Eamonn. So this is obviously a question that so many people in the country care so profoundly about. We've got to give huge credit to President Trump, as your previous guest was, his whole negotiating team, and all of the mediators. That includes Qatar, Egypt and Turkey, all of whom played an important role to get us where we are today. But as your previous guest said, there are really important questions that now have to be resolved. ensuring that Hamas can never again play a role in Gaza, that they must be disarmed. There's got to be lasting peace in the Middle East. This country, along with all other countries, have been affected by the violence in the Middle East, not just in its most recent phase, but in all of the most recent decades. President Trump has made a historic breakthrough, and Prime Minister Keir Starmer is in Egypt today to help support, through steadfast efforts, the Phase 2 negotiations, which should be addressing some of these really important questions. Just on the quantities of aid, I've already talked on this programme about the £74 million of aid that we have provided to Gaza. The Prime Minister has announced a further £20 million, and I'll be co-chairing a conference this afternoon, along with my Egyptian counterpart and other key members of the international community, to talk about how we reconstruct Gaza. Not all of that money, obviously, is going to come from the UK or the international community. We'll be talking about how you leverage in the private sector, how this can be done most effectively, but clearly it's in everybody's interests that peace returns to the Middle East, Gaza is reconstructed, the hostages go home, and there's a dignified future for the people of Gaza and wider Palestine.
Hey, Hamish, Phase 2 of the peace plan is to ensure the disarmament of Hamas. That is going to be a challenge in itself, isn't it? Because how can you destroy an ideology?
Well, I was very pleased in July when I was in New York to work alongside my colleagues in the international community to secure for the first time a commitment from all 22 Arab nations who are part of the Arab League. And they said with one voice, Hamas must be disarmed and can't play a role in the future of Gaza. Now, we've all seen some of the statements by Hamas officials over the most recent period, where the position of the region is really, really important. Today's events demonstrate that international pressure can work. It can work on all sides to this conflict, and we're going to continue to play our full role to ensure that Hamas feels that pressure from the region, from the UK, from the whole international community to abide by the 20-point plan. There are important negotiations about Phase 2, which are starting now, and we intend to play our full role.
Said Hamish, it couldn't happen in Northern Ireland, that peace couldn't be achieved with negotiation and talking to terrorists. No matter what happens next, people will have to talk to Hamas about all of this and whether Jonathan Powell's involved or not. It can be done. That must give you hope.
It does give me huge hope. I mean, it gives me hope. It gives people in this country hope, but also it gives huge hope to Palestinians and Israelis whose lives have been so blighted by this conflict. And I think today is a moment of hope. I'm not pretending, Eamonn, that this will be easy. As you said, this country has got its own history of difficult, long negotiations with a whole range of people. In the end, talks are the way that you deliver a lasting solution. And today is a very hopeful, promising day in that direction.
Hamish, we were just speaking to the Conservatives a little earlier on in the programme, and Kemi Badenoch is calling on Keir Starmer. In fact, she's written a letter to him, willing for him to appear before MPs, or one of his senior ministers to appear before MPs, to answer a number of questions regarding the government's role in the collapse of the China spy case. Will he be doing so? Will he be responding to Kemi Badenoch's letter, and will he be answering questions in Parliament?
I'm sure that there'll be discussion in Parliament about this case today and in the coming days, and I'm sure the Prime Minister will respond to the Leader of the Opposition's letter. Just for your viewers, I think it's quite important to set out what has happened here. So the CPS, who are independent, were putting together a case. That case was under really outdated legislation called the Official Secrets Act. That was written in 1911. It's one of the key questions is whether or not the country in question is an enemy. This all dates from alleged offences under the last government between 21 and 23. It was right that that legislation was updated. We have new legislation now called the National Security Act. That was passed in 23 with the support of Labour when we were in opposition. But the case that the CPS is trying to put together is under the old law in relation to the assessments of old ministers. Now, I know that Kemi Badenoch in that period said that China was not a foe. That was her line when she was the business secretary. Perhaps she's updated her view, but the CPS have to make a judgment on what the considerations of the British government in that period, when she was the business secretary, when the legislation, which they had left for far too long in place before they updated it only in 2023. And it's right that there are questions about this case. It's absolutely vital that the UK is understood by everyone to have robust measures in place to ensure we cannot be spied on by friend or foe. We have that in place with the National Security Act. We have a team of ministers committed to protecting our national security. What happened in the period of 21 to 23 and the legislation that was at issue then, I'm sure will be discussed in Parliament, but it is a historic case that we're talking about, not about the current assessment of Foreign Office ministers in charge at the moment, or indeed anybody else in the current government.
Well, one thing's for sure, busy times at the Foreign Office for you and all your colleagues. Hamish, we wish you well in your work, and thank you on this busy day for taking time to talk to us here on GB News. Very much appreciated. Hamish Faulkner there.
And still in the studio with us is our Home and Security Editor, Mark White. And Mark, we have just received first pictures, haven't we, of the released hostages?
Yeah, let's try and bring those images to you if we can. The images of at least two of the released hostages, Gali and Ziv Berman. Gali and Ziv Berman are twin brothers, aged 26 at the time. Now 28, of course, having been in captivity, held hostage for those 2 years, but separated in that time. Here are the two twin brothers meeting up again for the first time in 2 years, hugging, very emotional, understandably, you know, given what they have gone through in that time. We should say that the major breaking news within the last 10 minutes as well is the confirmation that the remaining 13 hostages who are still alive have now been handed to the care of the Red Cross and are being transported out of the Gaza Strip across the border into Israel. So that will be all 20 of those hostages who are still alive now handed over by Hamas.
Well, what a busy day it is, and it has been so far news-wise. Thank you for watching us over the past 3.5 hours. We've been on air from 6 a.m. We'll say goodbye to you from Ellie and me. We'll see you again tomorrow morning from 6. Let's cross to Andrew and Miriam, and they'll tell you what's on Britain's newsroom for the rest of the day.
So it's Andrew and Miriam here with Britain's Newsroom. We will be doing this extraordinary morning. Extraordinary because 7 hostages have been freed so far. The President of the United States has arrived, a dramatic moment, flying in on Air Force One. And we've seen a couple of photographs now of some hostages. One of them we know was the musician who was released. He was at that festival, and while he was being held in captivity, he sustained an eye injury, and he's now partially sighted. We're back now. We're looking at images now of Hostages Square, where thousands of people are gathering for this extraordinary, emotional moment in Israel's history. 2 years now since those hostages were taken in that Hamas massacre. 7 have been freed so far. We understand at least 1,200 have been released from the other side, because remember, a lot of Palestinian hostages, well, the Hamas call them hostages. The Israelis would say they were prisoners of war, are being freed too. But you can see, if you're listening on GB News, you can see in the faces of the people on Hostage Square, the joy, the unbridled joy. They're singing, they're waving the national flag. It is a remarkable moment. Who'd have thought it? Because we've been waiting for so long for this to happen. 2 years, and
extraordinary scenes.
And the breaking news is all 20 hostages, the living hostages, have been handed over. That's according to Hamas, so of course you have to have a bit of a health warning on everything they say, because remember, they are a terrorist organisation, but they are saying they've kept their side of the bargain. All living 20 Israeli hostages have been handed over. This news will have been fed to those people on Hostage Square, and which is why there's such scenes of unbridled joy there. Well, that is terrific news if all 20 have been freed. Of course, it will be more problematic and complicated to release the bodies of the 28 hostages who never made it, who died, who were killed or were murdered or starved to death, because some of them, there will be all sorts of issues. You don't need to go into the obvious reasons. So the breaking news is that all 20 living Israeli hostages have been freed. We sort of knew that must be going to happen, because otherwise why would Donald Trump have flown in there on Air Force One, which he did a few hours ago, barely an hour ago actually. He's going to be speaking soon alongside Netanyahu, and then he'll be going to Tel Aviv, and of course there's that major peace conference gathering in Egypt, where our own Prime Minister will be there too. Miriam Cates.
It is an incredible day of celebration. For 2 years, the Israeli government has been working for this day. Of course, we have seen other hostages released earlier, but the temporary peace deals that were arranged to bring those into being, of course, have broken down every single time. A great day of celebration. But also, as you were saying, Andrew, what is next in terms of those prisoners that have been released from Israeli jails, many with huge murder scores on their head, many terrorists now being released back into the West Bank or back into Gaza or sent to other countries? This is a massive price that Israel is paying to get their 20 hostages.
And many of them will be young men. They were radicalised. They would have spent maybe 2 years in prison, and they may want revenge. They will still be, if they follow the Hamas creed, they will want to see the eradication of Israel from the map of the world. And this is almost the easier stage, Miriam, isn't it? Freeing the hostages. The next stage is the de-arming of Hamas. How do they do it? Who supervises it? How can we be certain that they have given up all their arms? And then even more complicated, after the rebuilding of Gaza, one report I read today said it would take 2 years to clear the rubble.
Yes.
Who governs Gaza?
More bombs have been dropped on Gaza throughout the last 2 years than in Dresden and Berlin in the Second World War puts together.
It is
I read so. It's incredible destruction. But you're talking about the disarming of Hamas. Hamas have said that they are not willing to lay down their arms. They're willing to no longer be involved in the running of the Gaza Strip, but they will not disarm. So that is one of the points of the 20-point plan put forward by Donald Trump, is that Hamas must disarm. If one of those points has already been rejected by Hamas, we have to ask, what would be the consequences? For example, if they continue to refuse to disarm, would the Israelis try to disarm them by force? Would that then be seen as a breach of the terms of the ceasefire? And what would happen then? It's all very fragile.
And remember, there will be people in Netanyahu's cabinet who do not accept the terms of this peace deal because they're not agreeing to disarm, who will be pushing for the Hawks will be pushing at any point for it to unravel the whole deal.
And huge question marks over who will run the Gaza Strip. So the Israeli Defense Forces have already withdrawn to a previously agreed line. The Israelis are now only in a half of the Gaza Strip. So who governs in the other half right now? Well, let's go to
Please don't tell me Tony Blair.
Well, I think his name is certainly in the running for a potential involvement. But I think Trump has backtracked slightly, and he was reported in the Telegraph this morning as having said something along the lines of, well, I'm waiting to see what a popular choice he would be.
Well,
so
it wouldn't be popular in this country.
Left room.
Let's go and talk now to our Home Security Editor, Mark White, who can tell us more. Mark.
Well, the Israeli Defense Forces have now confirmed what we've been reporting for the last 15 minutes, that those remaining 13 hostages have now been transferred into the care of the Red Cross for transportation out of the Gaza Strip and to the safety